I never liked talking about that day. For years, I tried to bury it somewhere in the back of my mind, behind work, behind noise, behind anything that could keep me from remembering. But memories don't really die. They sit there waiting, and all it takes is the smallest thing to wake them up again. For me, it was a photo. I found it while cleaning my apartment last month, an old picture of my sister, Emily, standing on the trailhead that morning. She was smiling, holding up her water bottle like it was some kind of trophy. Just seeing her face again, frozen in that sunlight, pulled me straight back into it. Back to the last time I ever saw her. It was supposed to be simple. Just a day hike, the kind you don't even think about twice. We'd been going on that trail since we were kids, and even though it stretched for miles into the forest, there was nothing dangerous about it. Families walked it on weekends. Couples took their dogs there. It wasn't the wilderness, not really. Just trees, birds, dirt paths, and the occasional snake sunning itself on a rock. That morning was bright and cool, the kind of September day where the air feels sharp in your lungs. We drove out early before the trail got crowded and parked at the small gravel lot. There were only 2 other cars there. I remember because Emily commented on it, saying something like, "Guess we beat the rush." She was always cheerful in the mornings. I never was. I was still groggy, sipping from my thermos, while she stretched her arms and tied her hair back. She had that restless energy, like she couldn't wait to get moving. I should have noticed then how eager she seemed, how badly she wanted to get on the trail. But I didn't. We started walking, the gravel crunching under our boots. The woods swallowed us pretty quickly. That was one of the things I loved about that trail. You only had to go a few minutes in, and suddenly the world went quiet. Just the whisper of leaves overhead, the occasional chirp of a bird, and our footsteps. For the first mile, it was easy. We talked about stupid things. She was telling me about her new job, how her boss always chewed with his mouth open. I teased her about still being single. She shoved me playfully, the way she always did. It felt normal, safe, familiar. But somewhere after that first mile, I started noticing little things. The woods felt heavier. That's the only way I can describe it. The air was still cool, but it carried this damp smell, like rotting leaves. The trees seemed closer together. Shadows clung to the ground even though the sun was high. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just the forest. But then I realized how quiet it had gotten. Too quiet. I couldn't hear birds anymore. No rustle of squirrels in the underbrush. Just us. Just our boots and our breathing. Emily didn't seem to notice. She was walking a little ahead of me, her ponytail swinging side to side. She kept turning her head, glancing off the trail like something had caught her attention. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, too quickly. Then she smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. We kept going. The trail forked about 2 miles in. The left path was wide and well-traveled. The right path was narrower, climbing a bit steeper into the woods. We'd always taken the left, but that morning, Emily stopped. "Let's go this way," she said, pointing right. I frowned. "We've never gone that way." "Exactly," she said. "Come on, let's try something different." I hesitated. The right path looked wrong. I can't explain it. It wasn't just narrower. It looked darker. The trees on that side leaned in close, like they were guarding it, but Emily was already stepping onto it. She didn't even look back to see if I followed. And of course, I did. I wish I hadn't. The trail grew steeper fast, the ground soft with damp leaves that slid under our boots. The silence deepened until it felt like pressure in my ears. I tried making small talk, but Emily wasn't really answering anymore. She just kept walking faster, like something was pulling her forward. At one point, she stopped suddenly. I almost bumped into her. She was staring at the ground. "What is it?" I asked. She crouched down and brushed away some leaves. There were shapes carved into the dirt, circles, overlapping uneven circles, like someone had scratched them with a stick. "Probably just kids messing around," I said. Though my voice sounded thin, Emily didn't reply. She just kept staring at those circles, her lips pressed tight. Finally, she stood up and walked on without a word. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not just with the trail. With her. Her pace quickened. She barely glanced back at me. Her shoulders were tense, Her hands balled into fists. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said. But she didn't sound fine. Another half-mile in, we came to a clearing. A patch of open ground where the sun broke through the trees. In the center stood an old wooden post, half-rotted, leaning at an angle. There was no sign, no markings, just that lonely post sticking up from the dirt. Emily walked straight to it. She reached out, running her fingers down the wood. I felt a chill watching her. Something about the way she touched it. Like she recognized it, Em, I said quietly. "We should head back." She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on something beyond the clearing. I followed her gaze, but all I saw were more trees. Dense, endless trees. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "I think I know this place." That made no sense. We'd never been here before. I stepped closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Emily, let's go back, please." She finally turned to me then, and for a second I swear I didn't recognize her. Her face was pale, her eyes too wide. She looked lost, and then just like that, she smiled. Forced, brittle. "Yeah, sure, let's go back." Relief washed over me. I nodded and turned toward the trail. But when I looked back, she wasn't there. She was gone. I spun around, calling her name. My voice sounded strange in that silence. I ran to the clearing, searching behind the post, scanning the tree line. Nothing. I shouted until my throat hurt. My chest was tight, my hands shaking. I kept telling myself she was just playing a joke, that she'd jump out laughing any second. That was the kind of thing she'd do. But minutes passed, then an hour, and I never saw her again. The police searched for weeks. Volunteers combed the woods. Helicopters circled overhead. Dogs sniffed every inch of the trail. They found nothing. No tracks, no clothing, no body. Just gone. Like the trees swallowed her whole. It's been 10 years now, and I can still smell that damp air. I can still see those carved circles in the dirt. I can still feel the way her shoulder tensed under my hand, right before she slipped away. People tell me she probably wandered off, got lost, maybe even fell somewhere the searchers missed. They tell me I need to let it go, but they don't understand. She didn't wander, she didn't fall, she disappeared, and sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I hear her voice again, whispering from the clearing. "I think I know this place." The day after Emily vanished, everything blurred together. I remember the police station, the smell of burnt coffee, the endless questions. I remember repeating the same story over and over again until my throat felt raw. The officers nodded, scribbled notes, exchanged looks when they thought I wasn't watching. Somewhere deep down, I knew they didn't believe me, not really. They thought Emily wandered off, maybe fell, maybe just decided to leave. But none of those things made sense. Emily wasn't careless. She wasn't depressed. She didn't just vanish into thin air, and yet she did. By the second day, they organized search teams. I went with them, of course. I couldn't sit at home while strangers looked for her. I had to be there. The forest looked different that morning. Colder. The light seemed weaker, as if the sun was struggling to break through the canopy. The trees stood taller, closer together. Even though I'd walked those trails 100 times before, I felt like I was stepping into a place I'd never seen. We split into groups. Each group had volunteers, a few officers, and a pair of dogs. I ended up with 6 others, all carrying radios and wearing bright orange vests. I didn't wear one. I couldn't. Something about the fluorescent color felt wrong. Too cheerful for what we were doing. We started at the trailhead, retracing the path Emily and I had taken. The gravel lot was full of cars now, more than I'd ever seen there. People milling about, voices echoing, boots crunching on stone. But the moment we entered the trees, the noise thinned out. The forest swallowed it. It always did. We walked for about a mile before the chatter died down. The dogs sniffed along the edges of the trail, their handlers tugging at the leashes whenever they wandered too far. The rest of us scanned the ground, looking for footprints, scraps of clothing, anything. At first, there was nothing. Just dirt, roots, and damp leaves. My chest tightened with every step. I knew she was gone. But part of me still clung to the hope of seeing her ahead. Maybe sitting on a log. Tired, waiting for me to catch up. But instead, we found her bag. It was sitting right in the middle of the trail, not tossed, not dropped, placed. The straps were folded neatly, the zipper fully closed. A water bottle sat beside it, standing upright. Someone had arranged them. I froze. My mouth went dry. "That's hers," I whispered. One of the officers knelt and carefully unzipped the bag. Inside were her things: a sweatshirt, a half-empty snack wrapper, her phone, dead, of course. Everything was clean, untouched, no dirt on the fabric, no torn seams, no sign of struggle. "She must have set it down," one of the volunteers said. His voice was steady, but his eyes darted nervously to the woods. But I shook my head. No, she wouldn't leave it here. She wouldn't just walk away without it. The officer didn't reply. He just zipped the bag shut again and marked the location with a strip of bright tape. We kept moving. The trail forked again, and we took the narrower path, the same one Emily had chosen. My stomach turned with every step. I kept expecting to see her, to hear her voice. But all I heard was the crunch of boots, the distant panting of the dogs, and then, faintly, something else. A scream. We all froze. It was distant, muffled by the trees, but it was unmistakable. A long, drawn-out cry. "Emily!" I shouted before anyone could stop me. My voice cracked. The others looked at each other, uncertain. One of the handlers called it in on the radio. We waited. Silence. Then another scream. Louder this time. Closer. The dogs barked, straining at their leashes. My pulse pounded in my ears. "It's her," I said. "It has to be her." But the others weren't so sure. I saw it in their faces, the tight jaws, the way their eyes scanned the trees, not the ground. The sound came again, but from a different direction. To the left this time. Deeper in the woods. The men shouted to each other, debating whether to follow. I didn't wait. I ran. Branches whipped my arms, roots snagged my boots, but I didn't stop. My lungs burned as I pushed deeper, chasing the echoes. "Emily!" I screamed again. "I'm coming!" But the woods were playing tricks. Every time I thought I was close, the sound shifted. Ahead, then behind. To the left, then the right. Always just out of reach. Finally, I stumbled into a small clearing. The same one from before. The wooden post still stood in the center, leaning slightly, its surface dark with rot. The ground around it was littered with leaves, and there, half hidden beneath them, were those same circles carved into the dirt, overlapping, uneven. A mess of lines scratched by a hand that didn't care for precision, and beside them, footprints, Emily's boots. I recognized the tread. I'd teased her about them when she bought them, saying they looked too heavy for her small frame, but here they were, clear prints pressed deep into the soil, leading straight to the post, and then, nothing. They stopped, no prints leading away. I stared at them, my breath catching in my chest. She'd walked here. She'd stood here. And then she was gone. The others caught up to me a few minutes later, their voices loud, their radios crackling. They asked what I'd found. I pointed at the ground, but when they came closer, the footprints were gone. The soil was smooth, disturbed only by the wind. They looked at me strangely then, like I was making it up, like grief had scrambled my brain. But I know what I saw. We searched until nightfall. The screams never came again. The dogs whined and pulled at their leashes, but they didn't find a trail. When we finally returned to the lot, everyone looked defeated. Volunteers slumped against their cars, rubbing their faces. Officers spoke in low voices. No one met my eyes. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing those screams in my head. They weren't animal cries. They weren't echoes. They were human. They were Emily. And the worst part? Every time I replay them in my mind, I hear something else beneath them. A second voice. Lower. Whispering. Almost like laughter. 10 years is a long time. Long enough for people to stop asking questions. Long enough for friends to move on with their lives. Long enough for the police to box up the case and let it gather dust. But not long enough for me. Emily's face has stayed with me every single day. Not just her smile or the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. No, it's her face from that last moment. Pale, wide-eyed, looking at something I couldn't see. That's the version burned into me. People told me I needed closure, that I needed to accept she was gone. Some even suggested she ran away, that she wanted to leave her life behind. They don't know how cruel it feels to hear that. Because I know what I saw, and I know what I heard in those woods. For years, I swore I'd never go back. Just the thought of that trail made my chest tighten, made me sweat through my shirt. I avoided it even when friends invited me to hike nearby. But time does strange things. The longer I stayed away, the more the memories grew teeth. They gnawed at me, whispering in the dark, pulling me back, until last autumn. It started small. I was walking home from work, passing by the park near my apartment when I heard it. A voice, clear, sharp, cutting through the noise of traffic and barking dogs, my name, and it was her voice. "Emily's!" I spun around, heart pounding. The park was empty. Just a few leaves skittering across the pavement. But the sound lingered in my ears, curling down my spine like ice water. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment made me sit up, convinced it was her, convinced she was calling for me. After that, it kept happening. At the grocery store, on the train, once in the middle of a crowded street. Always the same. "My name," whispered low, just behind me, but when I turned, no one was there. I knew what it meant. She was still out there, or some part of her was. And if I wanted answers, there was only one place to go. So one morning, before the sun was fully up, I drove back to the trailhead. My stomach was in knots the whole way. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The lot was empty when I arrived. Gravel crunched under my tires, echoing too loudly in the quiet. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the path leading into the trees. It looked the same, and it didn't. The signpost was older, chipped around the edges. The trees were taller, heavier, their branches arching over the entrance like arms closing in. I told myself I'd only go a short way in, just enough to prove there was nothing waiting for me, that I could finally let go. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't stop. I stepped onto the trail, and the world outside slipped away. The silence was immediate. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of my boots on dirt. It was the same suffocating quiet I remembered from before. The same pressure in my ears, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Every step felt heavier than the last. Memories surfaced with each familiar turn. Emily walking ahead, swinging her ponytail, her laugh echoing through the trees, her sudden stillness at the fork in the path, and then her absence. My throat tightened, but I forced myself onward, past the mile marker, past the fork where she'd chosen the darker trail. The ground felt softer here, damp. My boots left impressions in the earth, and for a moment I thought I saw others too. Faint outlines, almost like hers. But when I blinked, they were gone. I kept walking. My chest burned, not from exertion, but from dread. And then I heard it, faint, drifting between the trees. My name, Daniel. I froze. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. It was her. I knew it was her. The exact tone, the same inflection she always used when teasing me. I spun around, scanning the woods. Empty. But the sound came again. Louder. Closer. Daniel. This time it wasn't behind me. It was deeper in, past the bend in the trail. My mouth went dry. My legs trembled, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. I followed. The trees grew denser, branches clawing at my jacket. Shadows stretched long across the path, even though the sun should have been high. The air felt heavier, damp with the smell of rot. Every few steps I heard her again, sometimes ahead, sometimes to the side. Each time it pulled me further in. Finally, I reached the clearing. It looked exactly as it had all those years ago. The crooked wooden post still stood in the center, its surface blackened with age. The ground was scattered with leaves, but underneath I saw them, those circles. Faded, half-buried, but still there. My chest tightened. My breath came shallow, and then... Daniel, her voice, clear as day. Right behind me, I turned slowly. The trees stood still. No one was there. But I swear in that moment, I felt her. The way you can feel someone standing close, their presence pressing against your skin? Emily? My voice cracked. Where are you? No answer. Just silence. I stepped closer to the post. My boots crunched over the leaves. The air around it felt colder, sharper, like stepping into a shadow. I reached out, my fingers brushing the rough wood, and then I heard it. Not just one voice, many whispers, layered on top of each other, rising from the trees, from the ground, from the air itself. Words I couldn't understand, twisting together, low and guttural, and beneath them, one clear cry. "Help me, Emily." My chest seized. My eyes burned. "I'm here," I shouted. "Tell me where you are." The whispers grew louder, faster, a tide of sound crashing over me. The trees seemed to sway, though there was no wind. The ground pulsed beneath my boots. I stumbled back, clutching my head. And then, silence. It stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The forest went still again. I stood there shaking, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave, to never set foot here again. But something in me couldn't move. Because for just a second, I'd heard her. Not the memory of her. Not a trick of my mind, her. And that meant she wasn't gone. Not completely. When I finally tore myself away and stumbled back down the trail, the sun was already dipping low, casting long shadows through the trees. The air felt heavy against my skin, clinging to me like damp cloth. By the time I reached my car, I was shaking so badly I could barely hold the keys. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and sat there gasping. I should have left it alone. I should have let her rest wherever she was, but now I can't. Because she's still out there, and she's still calling my name. I still remember that night on Lake Mercer. It's strange how memory works, how certain moments blur together over time, while others stay sharp, like broken glass stuck under your skin. No matter how many years pass, no matter how hard I try to forget, the sound of the water that night, the smell of gasoline from the boat, and the way the moon hit the surface of the lake, it all feels as if it just happened yesterday. We were a group of college friends, young, careless, the kind of people who thought nothing bad could ever touch us. We had just finished finals, and the whole summer stretched ahead of us like a promise. That's why we planned the trip. One last night together before everyone scattered back home or went off to internships. Just us, the lake, and a borrowed boat. There were 5 of us, me, Daniel, Claire, Matt, and Jordan. Daniel was the one who pushed for it. He had this restless energy, like sitting still too long might kill him. Claire was quieter, but you could tell she loved being around Daniel, even if she tried to hide it. Matt was the funny one, always cracking jokes, though half the time he was the only one laughing. And then there was Jordan. He wasn't the loudest or the smartest or the most interesting, but he had this way of making you feel like you weren't invisible. He listened, really listened. Out of everyone, he was the last person I expected to. Well, we drove up to the lake in Daniel's old pickup truck, music blasting, windows rolled down. It was one of those warm nights where the air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. The lake was about an hour out of town, far from the campus, far from the noise. The kind of place that feels cut off from the rest of the world. When we finally pulled up, the water was so still it looked more like glass than anything else. No ripples, no movement. Just this endless dark mirror under the moonlight. Daniel had borrowed a motorboat from his uncle. It wasn't much, just a small, beat-up thing with peeling paint and a faint smell of oil, but to us, it felt like freedom. We loaded it with beer, a cooler of snacks, and a single lantern for light. I remember Claire hesitating before stepping in, asking if it was safe. Daniel laughed at her, said, "It floats, doesn't it?" That was enough to quiet her. But I noticed the way her hand gripped the edge of the boat, just a little too tight. When we pushed off the dock, the sound of the motor cut through the silence of the lake. It echoed in every direction, bouncing back from the trees that lined the shore. Once we got far enough out, Daniel killed the engine and everything went quiet. It was almost unsettling how quickly the noise vanished. Suddenly it was just us floating in the middle of this vast black emptiness. The lantern cast a weak circle of yellow light, barely enough to see each other's faces. Outside of that glow there was nothing, just water and shadows we drank. We laughed. We talked about the future, about the kind of lives we thought we'd have. It was the kind of conversation you only have when you're young, when you believe you're invincible. Matt tried to start singing, but none of us knew the words, so we ended up just shouting nonsense into the night. Even Claire loosened up eventually, smiling as Daniel leaned close to whisper something in her ear. But Jordan was quiet. He sat near the edge of the boat, staring out into the water. I thought he was just lost in thought, but the longer I watched him, the more unsettled I felt. There was something in his face that didn't match the mood. Not sadness exactly, not fear, but detachment. Like he wasn't really there with us. Like he was already drifting away. I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me, startled, as if he hadn't realized I was watching. He forced a smile and said he was fine. But I didn't believe him. At one point, Daniel dared him to jump in. "Come on, it's just water," Daniel said, laughing. Jordan shook his head. "Not at night." Daniel rolled his eyes, teasing him, but he didn't push too hard. Still, I could tell it bothered him. Daniel wasn't used to people saying no. The hours passed. The moon shifted higher. The beer dwindled. The conversation slowed. And that's when things began to change. It started with the sound. A soft splash, somewhere out in the darkness. Too far to be one of us, too deliberate to be random. We all froze, listening. The ripples carried across the water, faint but clear. Matt tried to laugh it off, saying it was probably a fish. But his voice cracked in a way that betrayed him. Then came another splash, closer this time. Daniel grabbed the lantern and swung it toward the sound, but the light barely reached past the boat. All it did was make the darkness beyond feel heavier, pressing in from every side. We stared into the void, waiting, straining our eyes for movement. But there was nothing. Just silence. I don't know how long we sat like that. Maybe minutes, maybe longer. Eventually, Claire begged Daniel to stop waving the light around, said he was just scaring us. He muttered something under his breath and set it back down. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Jordan stood up. No warning, no explanation. He just rose to his feet, staring out at the water like he'd heard something none of us had. His face was pale in the lantern glow, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. We told him to sit down, that he was going to tip the boat. He didn't answer. Then, without a word, he stepped over the side. The splash was deafening. Claire screamed. Daniel cursed. We all rushed to the edge, peering into the water. But it was too dark, too deep. The surface rippled once, then smoothed back into silence. There was no sign of him. We shouted his name. Over and over, our voices breaking against the stillness. Daniel grabbed the lantern, leaning dangerously close to the water, but the light revealed nothing. Just endless black. Matt said we had to jump in after him. Daniel cursed again, said it was too dangerous. Claire was sobbing, clutching her knees to her chest. I felt frozen, torn between the urge to dive in and the fear that if I did, I'd vanish too. Minutes passed. No Jordan, no sound, no movement. Eventually, Daniel started the engine, his hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries. We circled the area, the weak lantern light skimming across the surface, but it was useless. The lake swallowed everything. By the time we reached the shore, Claire was hysterical. Matt was shouting at Daniel, accusing him of letting it happen. Daniel shouted back, saying it wasn't his fault that Jordan chose to jump. I just stood there on the dock, staring out at the water, numb. The lake looked the same as when we'd arrived. Calm, still, innocent, as if nothing had happened at all. When the police came, we told them what we saw. They searched for hours, but they never found him. No body, no trace, just emptiness. And yet, in the back of my mind, I can still see the look on Jordan's face before he stepped into the water. That blank, faraway stare, as if something out there was calling to him, something we couldn't see, something waiting in the dark. I didn't know it then, but that night was only the beginning. It was 2 days before they found anything, 2 long days where the rest of us barely spoke, barely slept. We stayed in Claire's apartment because none of us wanted to be alone, but being together didn't help. It only made the silence heavier. Daniel paced. Matt drank. Claire cried in the bathroom with the water running so we wouldn't hear her, and me, I just sat there staring at my phone, waiting for a call I knew wouldn't come. Every time the screen lit up, my chest seized. But it was never Jordan. It was always the same thing. Updates from the police, friends asking questions, or people pretending to care. The search team dragged Lake Mercer with boats and divers. They brought in dogs, sonar, lights so bright they cut through the fog like prison towers. But the lake never gave him back. It was like he'd been swallowed whole, until the morning they found the shoe. We drove down to the dock when we got the call. The place looked different now. Crowds of reporters, flashing cameras, police tape strung across the entrance. The same spot where we'd laughed and joked and shoved each other 2 nights earlier had become something else, a crime scene. The officer didn't let us through at first, but Daniel wouldn't back down. He demanded to know what they'd found. After some back and forth, they let us stand near the water line. That's when I saw it, a single sneaker, pale and bloated, floating just a few feet from shore. It drifted lazily against the dock as if mocking us. Daniel muttered that it didn't mean anything, that anyone could have dropped a shoe in the lake. But I knew. We all knew. It was Jordan's. Claire covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Matt whispered, "Why just one?" Nobody answered. A diver swam over and scooped it out of the water. It looked wrong in his gloved hands, swollen, heavy, waterlogged. Not just an object, but a relic. Proof that Jordan had been there. Proof that the lake hadn't simply erased him. But that wasn't all they found. Later that afternoon, one of the officers came to speak with us. He said a fisherman had spotted something tangled in weeds along the far bank. It wasn't Jordan's body. It was a camera. Daniel leaned forward immediately. "A camera? Like his?" The officer shrugged. "Could be. Hard to tell yet. But it matches the description of one you all said he carried." It was true. Jordan always brought that little handheld with him. He filmed everything, parties, trips, even boring afternoons where nothing happened. He said he liked capturing the in-between moments, the ones people forget. When the officer left, a strange silence fell over us. For the first time since that night, I saw something like hope in Daniel's face. Not hope that Jordan was alive, but hope that the camera might explain what happened. We didn't get to see it right away. The police took their time. They said the water had damaged the tape, that it needed to be cleaned and dried. They promised to show us when they could. Those days crawled by like years. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt that same sick lurch in my stomach. At night, I dreamt of Jordan's blank stare, the way he'd stood up without a word, the sound of him slipping into the water. In the dreams, I tried to grab him, but my hands were too slow, always too slow. When the call finally came, I almost didn't answer. The footage was ready. They showed it to us in a small room at the station. Just a bare table, metal chairs, and a television set on a rolling stand. The officer inserted the tape and pressed play. At first, it was almost comforting. Just the 5 of us on the boat, laughing, drinking, the lantern flickering in the background. Jordan must have set the camera down on a bench because the angle was low, tilted slightly toward the center. You could see Daniel's grin, Claire's shy smile, Matt's clumsy hand gestures. You could even hear my voice, though it sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. But Jordan himself never appeared on screen. He was always just out of frame. As the night wore on, the footage grew darker. The lantern light stretched thin, struggling against the shadows. The camera caught small things the eye missed. The nervous way Claire tugged at her sleeve, the tension in Daniel's jaw, the way my own hand tapped against the bench like I was trying to ground myself. Then came the splash. Even through the grainy tape, it was unmistakable. The sound hit like a gunshot. Everyone froze. The camera didn't move. It just sat there, unblinking, as Daniel lifted the lantern and waved it toward the sound. In the corner of the frame, the water rippled, but there was nothing there. The room grew colder as we watched. Claire whispered, "Turn it off." But the officer told her to wait. Another splash, louder, closer, and then the camera shifted, not much. Just a subtle tilt as if someone had nudged it. But none of us were near it. We were all standing at the edge of the boat, staring out at the water. I felt my stomach twist. The last part was the hardest to watch. Jordan stood up. His shadow crossed the frame, tall and distorted. He paused at the edge of the boat. The others shouted at him, voices rising, but he didn't answer. His face wasn't visible, only the outline of his body against the water, and then he stepped forward. The splash drowned out everything else. The camera shook almost violently before tumbling sideways. For a few seconds, all we saw was a blur of light and shadow, a smear of motion. Then it went dark. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. The officer rewound, slowed the footage, and played it again. This time, frame by frame. That's when we saw it. Just before Jordan moved, just as he leaned forward, something appeared in the water. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a ripple or a reflection. But the slower it played, the clearer it became. A shape. Pale, thin, almost human. It hovered just beneath the surface, arms outstretched as if waiting. And when Jordan stepped off the boat, it rose to meet him. Claire screamed. Matt cursed. Daniel slammed his fist against the table, shouting that it was fake, that the water damage had messed with the tape. But I couldn't look away, because deep down, I knew. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a glitch. Something had been in that lake with us. The officer stopped the tape, but the image stayed burned in my mind. That pale figure reaching, the way Jordan's body seemed to fall into its arms. They asked us not to talk about it, said the tape was inconclusive, said showing it to the public would cause panic. But I didn't care about the public. I cared about what I'd seen, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night back at Claire's apartment, none of us spoke for hours. Daniel sat in the corner, staring at his hands. Matt chain-smoked on the balcony. Claire kept asking the same question over and over, her voice trembling. Why him? Why Jordan? I didn't have an answer. But when I closed my eyes, I saw the water, and I heard something, faint and muffled, like a voice calling from beneath the surface. I told myself I wouldn't watch it again. That one viewing at the station should have been enough. But the image haunted me. That pale shape beneath the water, the way it reached for Jordan, it was burned into me like a brand. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't push it out of my head. The police had kept the original tape, but I'd been paying attention. While the officers talked among themselves, while Claire cried and Daniel argued, I noticed something most of them missed. They'd made a backup, a digital copy. They saved it onto a disc, slipped it into a plain white envelope, and left it on the desk. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I was desperate for answers. Maybe I was just selfish. But when nobody was looking, I slipped it under my jacket and walked out. My hands shook the whole way back to the car. I told myself I'd never open it, that I just wanted to keep it safe. But the moment I was alone in my apartment, I found myself sliding the disc into my laptop. The screen flickered. The video loaded, and suddenly I was back on that boat. The laughter, the drinking, the lantern glow. All of it replayed in grainy detail, familiar yet unbearable. I could hear my own voice in the background, and it made my stomach twist. We'd been so sure nothing could touch us. We'd been so wrong. I paused the footage when Jordan's shadow crossed the frame. My breath caught. Even frozen, there was something about the way he stood, rigid, unnatural. Like he wasn't moving by choice. Like something else was guiding him. I let it play again. The splash, the chaos, the camera tumbling sideways. My pulse hammered in my ears. And then that moment, the figure in the water, I replayed it again. And again, slowing it down, frame by frame. At first, I saw the same thing as before, a pale outline, half-formed, reaching up. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became. It wasn't just a shape. It was a face. Smooth, hollow, eyes too wide, too dark. A mouth that wasn't quite open but wasn't closed either. And for the briefest moment, I could swear it was looking at me. Not Jordan, not anyone else. Me. I pushed back from the desk so fast my chair nearly tipped. My hands trembled, sweat cold on my forehead. I told myself it was just water distortion, the way light bends beneath the surface. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I shut the laptop, sat in silence, tried to steady my breathing, but the image wouldn't leave. Every time I blinked, I saw it hovering there, waiting. That night, I dreamed of the lake. In the dream, I was back on the boat, but I was alone. The lantern burned low, barely enough to cut the darkness. The water stretched endless in every direction, smooth as glass. And then I saw it. A ripple, slow and deliberate, moving closer. I leaned over the edge, peering into the black. That's when the face appeared, rising up from the depths, eyes wide, mouth slack, staring at me, waiting. I woke drenched in sweat, gasping for air. The sound of dripping water echoed in my ears, though the room was bone dry. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I told myself I wouldn't look at the footage again. But by evening, I'd given in. I loaded it back up, pausing on that one frame where the face appeared. I stared at it for so long that the pixels seemed to shift. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. Behind Jordan, just faintly, barely visible in the dark water, another face, smaller, sharper. It was only there for a single frame, but it was there, and then another, and another. Not one shape, but many. Faces hidden in the ripples, pressed against the underside of the lake like hands on glass. I slammed the laptop shut. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I wanted to throw the disc away, bury it, burn it, anything. But I couldn't, because part of me needed to know the truth. I tried to tell Daniel, but he wouldn't listen. He said I was losing it, that I was letting my guilt mess with my head. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see, but Claire believed me. She didn't say much, but when I told her about the face, her expression said it all. Pale, tight-lipped, trembling. She whispered, "I saw it too." That's when I realized I wasn't imagining it. Later that week, I went back to the lake. I don't know why. Maybe I thought seeing it again in the daylight would break the spell. But standing there on the dock, staring out at that calm, innocent surface, it felt worse. Because I knew what was beneath. The water moved lazily against the shore, like it was breathing. I crouched down, staring at my reflection. For a moment, I thought I saw another reflection beside mine. Pale, hollow-eyed. I blinked, and it was gone. I left in a hurry, heart hammering, telling myself I wouldn't come back. But the truth was, the lake wasn't done with me. Every night I dreamed of it. Every day I heard faint splashes, even when I was nowhere near water. And the faces. God, the faces! The more I thought about the footage, the more I realized something. Jordan hadn't just jumped. He hadn't fallen. He'd been taken. Pulled under, and whatever pulled him wasn't alone. I should have stayed away from Lake Mercer. Every part of me knew that. But some things don't let go, no matter how much you beg them to. The footage, the faces in the water, Jordan's blank stare. It all clung to me, dragging me back to that place, like the current pulling at my ankles. For a while, I tried to fight it. I threw myself into distractions, classes, work, anything that might drown out the memory. But it never worked. Nights were the worst. I'd wake at 3 in the morning, heart racing, certain I'd heard water lapping against my bedroom walls. I'd turn on the light, but of course the floor was dry. Always dry, except the sound lingered. A slow, steady rhythm. Like breathing, after a few weeks I gave in. I told myself I was just gonna look. Just stand on the shore, see it in the moonlight, and prove to myself it was just a lake. Just water, nothing more. But that was a lie. The first time I went back, the air was sharp with cold, even though it was late spring. Mist curled over the surface, hiding most of the lake from view. The dock creaked under my weight as I stepped out onto it. The wood felt damp, almost soft, as if it had been rotting from within. I stood there for a long time, staring at the water. It was so still, too still. My reflection stared back, pale and hollow-eyed, and for a moment I thought I saw another reflection beside mine. A face, thin, blurred by ripples, watching. I told myself it was just imagination, but when I finally turned to leave, I heard it. My name, soft, muffled, as though spoken through water. I froze. The mist thickened, curling around my legs, and the dock groaned under me. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. I listened, heart hammering, and the voice came again, this time clearer, calling me. I stumbled back to my car and drove away, knuckles white against the steering wheel. But even as I left, I couldn't shake the sound of it. My name, rising from the depths, carried on the water. That should have been enough to keep me away for good. But the pull only grew stronger. It was like something inside me had cracked open. Every quiet moment, every pause in conversation, every silence in the middle of the night, I felt it. The call, not loud, not demanding, just steady. Patient, like it knew I'd come back eventually, and it was right. I returned again. And again, always at night, always alone. The others, Daniel, Claire, Matt, they stopped talking about it. None of them wanted to admit what we'd seen, but I couldn't let it go. The second time I went back, I brought a flashlight. Its beam cut across the surface, revealing only fog and water. But when I swept it toward the center of the lake, something flashed. Just for an instant, a pale shimmer beneath the surface. I killed the light immediately, my chest tightening, because deep down, I didn't want to see what it was. The third time, I didn't even bring a light. I just stood there in the dark, listening. The mist curled around me thick as smoke, and once again, I heard it. Not just my name this time. Laughter. Jordan's laugh. It echoed across the water, familiar and wrong all at once. My throat closed. My legs trembled. For a second, I almost stepped forward, almost let myself slip into the lake, but something in me resisted. Some final shred of instinct kept me rooted to the dock. That night when I got home, I realized my shoes were damp. Not from dew, from water, lake water. Even though I swore I hadn't stepped off the dock, I started losing track of days after that. Sleep came in fragments, broken by dreams of pale faces rising from the depths. My reflection in the mirror began to feel wrong, like it wasn't keeping up with me. Sometimes when I moved, I thought I saw it lag just a fraction behind. The call grew louder, stronger, more insistent. One night I woke to find my window open, curtains billowing, cold air rushing in. On the sill, drops of water glistened in the moonlight, trailing toward my bed. My heart nearly stopped. I slammed the window shut and pressed my back against the wall, whispering to myself that it wasn't real. But I knew better. The lake wanted me. The final time I went back, the moon was full. The water shone silver, smooth as glass. I walked out onto the dock like I'd done before, but this time I didn't hesitate. I knelt down, staring at the reflection below. My face looked hollow, stretched thin, and then another face surfaced beside it. Pale, wide-eyed, lips parted in a silent whisper. Jordan. I whispered his name, my throat tight. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking, and slowly his mouth began to move. Not forming words I could hear, but shapes I almost recognized. Like he was speaking, but the water swallowed the sound. I leaned closer, desperate to understand. The dock groaned beneath me, the wood slick under my palms. My reflection rippled, breaking into pieces, and then, without warning, I felt it. A tug. Cold, strong, pulling at me from beneath the surface. My stomach dropped. I stumbled back, gasping, but the pull didn't stop. It wasn't physical, not yet. It was inside me, a weight in my chest, a pressure in my skull, a voice, not spoken but felt, urging me to let go, to join them. I don't remember how I broke free. One second, I was leaning over the edge, inches from plunging in. The next, I was on the ground, crawling backward, lungs burning. The mist closed in around me, and for a moment, I thought I saw dozens of faces beneath the water, staring up in silence. By the time I reached my car, I was shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the ignition. I drove blind, tears streaking my face, every nerve in my body screaming to get away, but even now, safe in my room, I can feel it. The pull, the water calling to me. Sometimes when it's quiet, I still hear Jordan's laugh. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see his face, pale and hollow, waiting just beneath the surface, and I know it's only a matter of time. Because you don't escape, Lake Mercer. Not really. You just delay the moment it finally takes you. I still remember the day they went missing. 2 brothers, locals, ordinary guys. The storm came in sudden, heavy, like the sky had been holding its breath and finally let it go all at once. Snow fell so thick you could barely see the road ahead, and the wind cut through everything like it had teeth. People around here know better than to drive in weather like that, but the brothers, maybe they thought they could beat it. Maybe they thought it was just another winter night in the mountains, but they never made it home. Their truck was found the next morning, parked on a dirt trail that led into the woods. The strange part? The engine was still warm, like they had only just stepped out. But there were no footprints in the snow, nothing to show which way they went. That's where it started. I wasn't there when the search first began. I only heard the story in fragments, at the diner, at the gas station, whispered over steaming mugs of coffee. Everyone said the same thing. They should have left tracks. Even in heavy snow, a warm engine means they hadn't been gone long. So why wasn't there a single print? Not even a scuff. The sheriff called in a search team. Volunteers with dogs, flashlights, radios. They followed the tree line, combing the area in grids. But the snow just kept falling, erasing whatever answers might have been there. Someone mentioned the old cabin. It was barely a mile from where the truck was left. Now the cabin has been empty for years. People say hunters used it once, back when the woods were busier before the land grew colder, quieter. But most folks avoided it, not because of superstition. At least that's what they claimed, but because it never looked right. It leaned at odd angles, half buried in the drifts, like it was sinking into the ground. Windows boarded, chimney cracked. And when you stood near it, the wind always seemed louder, sharper, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The search team checked it, of course. The door was closed, but not locked. Inside, the air was still, frozen stiff. They found no one. No signs of the brothers. Nothing but frost crawling up the walls and dust frozen in place. The dogs whined at the doorway, but refused to step inside. When I finally drove out there, a few days later, I felt the storm before I even reached the woods. The wind never seemed to leave that stretch of road. It howled against the truck like it was alive. The sheriff had already pulled back most of the search by then. They called it unsafe. Said the snow was too heavy, the forest too deep, too dangerous to risk more lives. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The truck had been left running, lights on, doors shut. Both brothers' wallets were inside. Their gloves. One of them had left his phone on the dash, screen still glowing. It was like they had just stepped out and then vanished. I parked at the same spot where they had. The snow came up to my knees as I pushed forward, flashlight cutting through the haze. I could see the cabin through the trees, dark and small, crouching in the white. Every step felt wrong. The silence between the gusts of wind wasn't silence at all. It was heavy, pressing down, filling my ears with a low hum I couldn't place. When I reached the cabin, I stood there for a long time staring at the door. It looked fragile, swollen from years of weather. A simple push would have opened it, but I didn't want to, not yet. Instead, I circled it. The snow was piled high against the back wall, drifted to the roofline. I noticed how the trees bent in toward the cabin, like they were leaning closer, curious. The boards over the windows were loose but not broken. Nothing suggested anyone had forced their way in or out. I came back to the door. The handle was rusted, stiff. When I finally pulled it open, the hinges screamed into the stillness. Inside, the air hit me like a wall. Stale, bitter cold, the kind of cold that doesn't just sting your skin, it sinks into your bones. I shined the flashlight around. The floor was warped, covered in frost. Old chairs sat scattered, their wood split and peeling. A single table leaned against the far wall. The chimney, wide and black, opened into nothing. No footprints, no signs of life. But I kept thinking about the brothers. If they had come in here to escape the storm, wouldn't there have been something? Even a mark in the dust? A print on the frost? There was nothing. Still, I stepped inside. I don't know how long I stood there, breathing, listening. The cabin didn't make the sounds you'd expect. No creaks, no settling wood. Just silence, deep and unnatural. I thought about the engine still running. The warmth left in the truck. Two brothers stepping into the storm, only to disappear, and I realized then what was wrong. The snow outside should have buried their trail by morning. Yes. But when they left the truck, when they first stepped out, there should have been something. The storm had only just begun. At least a trace, a sign of direction. But the sheriff was right. There hadn't been a single footprint. It was as if they had stepped out of the truck and straight into the air. I left the cabin in a hurry, slamming the door behind me, my breath a thick cloud. The wind tore across the clearing, sharp and cold, filling my ears with that same low hum. I forced my way back to the truck, half running, half stumbling through the snow. My hands were shaking when I gripped the wheel. I sat there, engine rumbling, headlights spilling against the empty trail, and for a moment, I swear I saw movement. Between the trees, just beyond the reach of the light, two shapes. Standing side by side, watching. But when I blinked, they were gone. The brothers were never found. Their truck was towed into town, impounded, searched a dozen times over. But it offered no answers. The cabin was boarded tighter, the path leading to it buried under snow. People stopped talking about it after a while. Life moved on, as it always does. but not for me. I still think about that night, about the warmth left in their engine, about the empty cabin, untouched, waiting, about the snow, too clean, too perfect, like the world had erased them on purpose. And sometimes, when the wind howls just right, rattling the windows in my house, I hear that same low hum I heard near the cabin. It presses against my skull, deep and steady, until I swear I can almost hear voices inside it. Two voices tangled in the storm. And I wonder if maybe the cabin isn't abandoned at all. Maybe it never was. I told myself I would never go back there. After the brothers vanished, after the endless searches turned up nothing, I swore I would leave the cabin to rot, to let the snow swallow it whole. But something about it kept pulling at me. Like a hook buried under my skin, I worked as a volunteer for the local rescue team. I'd seen storms take lives before. I'd pulled people out of wrecks, guided families down from frozen trails. But this was different. The brothers hadn't been buried by snow. They hadn't slipped on ice. They had been erased, and I couldn't let it go. A month passed. The storm had broken, leaving the forest quiet, layered in white so heavy it looked like another world. I told myself I was only going back to make peace with it, to prove to myself that there was nothing there. I drove alone this time. The same dirt trail, the same bend in the road. When my tires crunched to a stop, I realized I was parked in the exact spot where the brothers' truck had been left. The clearing looked smaller than I remembered. The trees pressed in close, their branches heavy with ice. And through them, crouched in the snow, was the cabin. It hadn't changed, but as I stepped out, as the cold gnawed at my face, I noticed something I hadn't before. The boards over the windows, they looked newer. Not freshly nailed, but firmer, stronger, like someone had come back after me after the search and reinforced them. I told myself it was just the sheriff. Just precautions. But it made the air feel heavier, like the cabin was being sealed, not abandoned. I trudged through the snow until I stood at the door. My flashlight beam skated over the rough wood, the hinges eaten with rust. I gripped the handle, breath fogging the air. That's when I heard it. A knock. It was faint at first, buried under the wind, but I swear I felt it in my chest before I even heard it in my ears. A slow, heavy knock. 3 times, knock, 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 I froze. The cabin was supposed to be empty. I had seen it myself. Just frost and silence. I pressed closer, ear near the wood, holding my breath. And again it came. Knock, knock, knock. Not from the outside. From within, every part of me screamed to turn back, to run through the snow, leave the cabin behind, and never speak of it again. But I couldn't. I pushed the door. The wood groaned as it opened, slow, reluctant. The smell hit me first, sharp, biting like ice that's been trapped too long underground. My flashlight caught the inside, and for a moment, I thought I was seeing it wrong. The walls, every surface, were coated in ice. Thick, glassy sheets that glimmered like mirrors. The chairs, the table, the chimney bricks, everything had been swallowed by frost. It was beautiful and horrifying at the same time. The way the light bent and split, reflections crawling across the room like moving shadows. And then it came again. Knock. This time, I saw it. The sound wasn't from the door. It was from inside the ice itself. A dull, muffled thud, echoing from within the walls. I stepped forward, heart hammering, the crunch of ice loud under my boots. My flashlight shook as I lifted it toward the wall. The knock came again, and I swear the ice moved. Just slightly, a ripple, as if something pressed against it from the other side. I wanted to call out, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was dry, frozen tight. All I could do was stand there, staring at the wall as the knocking grew louder, sharper, more desperate. Knock, knock, knock. Each strike rattled through the cabin, echoing in my bones. I staggered back, slipping against the frost, breath tearing from my lungs, and then silence. The knocking stopped. The cabin fell still, heavy. The kind of stillness that makes you realize how loud your own heartbeat is. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My flashlight beam flickered, catching my reflection in the wall of ice. My face, pale and trembling, eyes wide. But then, Another reflection appeared beside mine. Not clear, not sharp. Just a blurred shape standing shoulder to shoulder with me. I spun around. The cabin was empty. When I turned back, the shape was gone. I stumbled for the door, panic rising like a tide. But as my hand hit the handle, I heard it again. Faint. Almost gentle this time. Knock, and this time, I swear I heard something else with it. A voice. Muffled. Fragile. Like it was trapped beneath a mile of snow. Help. Just that. One word. I yanked the door open, storming into the cold night. My breath came in ragged clouds, my pulse too fast, too loud. I didn't look back at the cabin. I couldn't. The forest swallowed me as I ran, branches snapping under my arms, snow filling my boots. I didn't stop until I was in my truck, engine roaring, headlights spilling across the empty trail. But even there, in the false safety of the cab, I could still hear it. That knock. Soft. Steady. As if it had followed me. I told the sheriff what I'd heard, what I'd seen. He looked at me for a long time, his face unreadable. Then he shook his head. Said the cold can play tricks. Said isolation messes with the mind. He told me not to go back again. That the cabin wasn't mine to worry about, but I could tell in his eyes he knew I wasn't lying. It's been weeks now. I haven't gone near the cabin again, though I feel it calling me every time the wind rattles the trees outside my house. But I can't shake what I saw. The ice-coated walls, the knock from nowhere, the reflection that didn't belong to me, and that voice. Help. Sometimes late at night when the storm presses against the windows, I hear it again. Not in the cabin this time, in my own walls, soft, careful, patient, knock, 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 and I wonder if maybe the brothers didn't disappear after all. Maybe they're still here, frozen somewhere I can't reach, waiting for someone to answer. I don't know why I remember that night so clearly. It was nothing special at first. Just another late ride home, the kind I'd done before without thinking twice. But sometimes it's the little nights, the boring nights that cut deepest into your memory. And once they do, they don't let go. It was after 9. The sky was heavy, dark, almost like it was pressing down on the streets. The streetlights along the road hummed, but most of them were weak, their light barely spilling across the cracked pavement. I kept checking my phone, tapping it awake just to see the glowing numbers at the top. 7. The bus should have come at 9 sharp. It was never on time, not really, but usually within a few minutes. 10 at most. I told myself it was fine, that it would pull up any second. I sat on the metal bench, cold seeping through my jeans. The bus stop wasn't much, just a pole with a faded sign and the bench beside it. No shelter, no glass walls like some stops had. Just me, sitting out in the open, waiting. I wrapped my hoodie tighter around me and pulled my backpack closer. The air was colder than I expected, and every time a car passed, I caught myself glancing up, hoping it was the bus. But every time it wasn't, just another pair of headlights rushing past. I tried not to think about how empty the street was. The road stretched long and flat in both directions, lined with houses that looked asleep. Curtains drawn. Porch lights off, like the whole world had already gone inside, locked their doors, and forgotten me. At 9:12, I finally pulled out my phone again. I had 2 bars of service. Enough. I opened my messages, scrolling through, trying to distract myself. My fingers shook a little, and I kept telling myself it was just from the cold. I didn't want to admit I was nervous. Because what was there to be nervous about? People waited for buses all the time. People stood at empty stops all the time. But the longer I sat there, the more I felt like I shouldn't be. A car passed. Then silence. Not just quiet, silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. The kind where you notice your own breathing. I tried to hum under my breath just to fill the space, but my voice cracked, thin and shaky. I stopped. At 9:20, I dialed my friend. Just to hear a voice. "Hey," I said when she picked up. My voice sounded small, smaller than I wanted. "I'm still waiting. The bus didn't come yet." There was a pause on the other end, like she was trying to process what I said. Then she laughed, soft but nervous. "Maybe it's late," she said. "They're always late." "I know, but..." I trailed off, my eyes fixed on the stretch of road to the right. The shadows seemed thicker somehow, like they were gathering. It's been a while. She told me not to worry. She told me buses skip sometimes, that another one would come. She was trying to be calm for me, but I could hear the unease in her voice too. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But as we talked, I noticed something strange. There were no cars anymore. None. Not a single one. The road was empty, stretching on in both directions, dark and endless. And the houses, the ones with their curtains drawn tight, looked wrong somehow. Like they weren't houses anymore, just shapes, just outlines. "Are you still there?" she asked. "Yeah," I whispered. My hand was sweating against the phone, but I didn't want to let go. It feels weird. Like I'm the only one here." Another pause. Then, quieter. "You want me to stay on the line?" "Yes, please." We sat like that for a while. Me staring down the road, her breathing on the other end. I thought about asking her to come get me, but she didn't drive. And even if she did, I wasn't sure she'd find me. The stop didn't feel like it was on the same road anymore. Like I was waiting in a place that didn't exist. At 9:28, my phone buzzed. The line cut. I stared at the screen. No service. Just like that, I was alone again. I don't know how long I sat there after that. Every time I thought about getting up and walking home, my legs wouldn't move. It felt like if I left the bench, something bad would happen. Like the darkness itself was waiting for me to step off. So I stayed. I gripped my backpack straps, stared straight ahead, and waited. My chest was tight, my breath shallow. I kept glancing at the road, certain I'd see headlights. But none came. The silence grew heavier. I thought I heard something then. Not a car, not footsteps. Just a low hum, almost like the streetlights were whispering. I tried to ignore it, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. A sound far away, like voices overlapping. Dozens of voices, soft and muffled, rising and falling like a tide. I wanted to call my friend again, to hear her voice. But when I checked my phone, the battery was at 7%. The little red bar glowed like a warning. I held it anyway. I whispered into the dark, pretending she was still on the other end. "It's fine. It's just late. It'll come. It always comes." But the words didn't feel true anymore. The road in front of me stretched longer than it should have. I swear it did. Like the street had grown, pushing further away, houses drifting back into the dark. The pole with the bus sign looked crooked, bending, almost melting into the night. I rubbed my eyes, but when I looked again, it was the same. I don't know how much time passed. My phone slipped lower and lower in my hand until the screen went black. I didn't even notice it die. All I remember is the silence breaking. Not with the roar of a bus engine, not with the hiss of brakes, no. It broke with something else. A voice. Close, right behind me. Still waiting? I froze. My body locked up. I couldn't turn, couldn't breathe. The voice was soft, almost kind, but it didn't sound real. It sounded like someone trying to remember how words worked, and when I finally forced myself to turn, no one was there. The bench was empty. The road was empty. I was empty. The bus never came. And deep down, I don't think it ever was supposed to. I thought that night would fade. Like all the other nights I'd wasted waiting for buses that came late or never came at all. I told myself I'd forget it, that it was nothing. Just a bad dream my mind dragged into reality. But a week later, my backpack turned up, and it wasn't where I left it. It was found miles away at another bus stop. A stop I'd never been to. A stop I couldn't even point to on a map. They said some man walking his dog spotted it, slumped against the bench like it had been sitting there forever. A backpack, a hoodie, and inside, a notebook. My notebook. At first, I thought maybe someone had taken it, dumped it there. That would have been easy, simple. But when I got the call, when I went to see it, something inside me told me not to. I shouldn't have gone. The station office was small, just a square room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The man behind the desk barely looked at me as he slid the backpack forward. It looked the same, my patches on the front pocket, my fraying zipper, but it felt wrong. It looked older, like it had been sitting in the rain for months, though the man said it was dry when they found it. I hesitated, but I unzipped it anyway. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Damp, sour, like something had rotted inside. My clothes were there, but stiff, discolored, like they'd been soaked and dried too many times. My water bottle was empty, the plastic warped as if it had been melted, and then I saw the notebook. It wasn't new. The cover was bent, the corners frayed, but it was mine. I knew the stickers I'd put on the front. I knew the doodles along the edges. When I flipped it open, my hands began to shake, page after page, filled with writing. Not neat writing, desperate scratches, lines crammed together, words overlapping. Over and over across dozens of pages, the same phrase repeated until the ink bled through. He won't let me go. The words clawed across the paper like someone had written them in a panic. Again and again until they were carved into the page. I dropped the notebook. My knees went weak, and for a second I thought I might throw up. Because it was my handwriting. Not similar, not close. My handwriting. Every loop of the letters, every uneven tilt, every mistake, mine, but I never wrote it. I told the man behind the desk that the backpack wasn't mine. I told him I'd never seen it before, that someone must have forged my notes. I said anything I could think of to make it not true. He just looked at me, tired, unimpressed. Said I could take it or leave it, but it was logged under my name. Someone had matched it. So I left with it. I carried that backpack home like it was a coffin strapped to my shoulders. Every step felt heavier, like something inside it was pulling me down. That night, I laid it on the floor of my room and just stared at it. My phone lit up again and again with texts from my friend asking if I was okay, if I wanted to talk, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. I picked up the notebook again. The pages blurred together as I flipped through them faster and faster, as if I could outrun the words. But it didn't matter. They were all the same. Every page, the same sentence, bleeding into the next. He won't let me go. Near the back, though, the words changed. Not much, but enough to make me stop cold. The letters got smaller, shaky, almost unreadable. Between the endless lines, one sentence stood out. He's waiting where the road splits. I read it again, and again. My heart thudded so loud it hurt. I didn't know what road it meant. I didn't want to know, but part of me did. A deep, sick part of me needed to. I shoved the notebook back inside the backpack and pushed it into the corner of the room, facing the wall like a guilty thing. I told myself I wouldn't look at it again. I told myself it wasn't mine. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words carved into the paper, felt them digging into my skin. And worse, I started remembering, not the whole night, just fragments. The way the road seemed longer than it should have been. The way the silence pressed against my ears. The voice behind me, soft, wrong, asking if I was still waiting. I told myself I'd imagined it, that it was a trick of my mind. But then why did I keep hearing it in my head? Why did I keep feeling breath on the back of my neck when I knew no one was there? By the third night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I pulled the backpack closer, yanked the notebook free, and flipped to the last page. There, scrawled so faint I almost missed it, were new words. I told you not to leave. The pen marks were fresh. The ink hadn't even dried fully in my hand. My hand was smudged with black. I dropped the notebook, staring at my fingers. Ink stained the tips. My pen lay uncapped on the floor beside me, though I didn't remember opening it. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Because I realized then, maybe I hadn't just been waiting for the bus that night. Maybe something else had been waiting for me. And now, no matter where I went, no matter how far I ran, it was following. The words in the notebook weren't just written by me. They were written through me, and whatever he was, he wasn't done yet. Years have passed since that night. You'd think time would make it fade, that the edges would blur until it all felt like some strange dream. But it hasn't. If anything, the memory has sharpened. Every detail is etched into me, like a scar that never heals right. I don't take buses anymore. I tell people it's because I drive now. Because it's easier, faster, safer. That's the word I use, safer. But really, it's because I can't bring myself to sit at another stop. I can't look at an empty stretch of road without feeling my chest tighten, without waiting for that voice again. Still, no matter how far I drive, I keep seeing that bench. That crooked pole with its faded sign. That road stretching longer than it should. It shows up in my head when I least expect it. when I'm at work, when I'm at the store, when I'm lying in bed at night. It's always there waiting, and sometimes I think it follows me. One night not long ago, I was driving home. The rain was coming down hard, my wipers fighting to keep the windshield clear. The highway was nearly empty, just a ribbon of wet asphalt glowing under my headlights. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just tired, ready to get home. Then I saw it. On the side of the road, through the curtain of rain, a bus stop. Not just any stop. The stop. The same bent pole. The same lonely bench. Miles from anywhere it should have been. At first, I thought I was imagining it. My hands tightened on the wheel, my breath caught. But then I saw her. A girl. She was standing there, soaked to the bone, rain dripping from her hair. Her clothes clung to her skin, dark and heavy. She was waving, her arm cutting through the downpour, desperate. My headlights caught her face for just a second. Pale, lips trembling, eyes wide with fear. She looked younger than me, maybe the same age I was back then. I should have slowed down. I should have pulled over. That's what any normal person would have done. But I didn't. Because in that split second, I felt something twist inside me. A cold recognition. She wasn't waiting for just any ride. She was waiting for me. My stomach dropped. My foot pressed harder on the gas. The engine roared, tires hissing against the wet pavement. I told myself not to look, to keep driving, to pretend I hadn't seen her. But I did look, and as the light from my headlights washed over the stop, she vanished. One moment, she was there, drenched, waving, eyes pleading. The next, she was gone. The bench was empty. The road was empty. Just rain and asphalt stretching on forever. I nearly lost control of the car. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the wheel until my knuckles turned white. My breath came in short gasps, fogging the glass. I wanted to believe it was just a trick of the rain. Just a tired mind playing games. But deep down I knew better. It wasn't random. It wasn't a dream. It was the same stop. The same silence. The same waiting. And now, she was part of it too. The rest of the drive was a blur. I don't even remember pulling into my driveway. Don't remember shutting off the engine. I just remember sitting in the car, rain hammering the roof, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I thought about the notebook. About those pages filled with my handwriting, words I never meant to write. He won't let me go. I thought I'd escaped it. That leaving the bench, leaving that night behind, meant I was free. But seeing her there proved something I never wanted to admit. No one leaves. It doesn't matter how far you drive, how many years pass, how many times you tell yourself it wasn't real. The road doesn't forget. The stop doesn't forget. And he doesn't forget either. Sometimes late at night I replay that moment in my head. The girl's eyes meeting mine. The way her hand cut through the rain. The way she disappeared before I could reach her. And I wonder if someone once saw me the same way. Sitting there, waiting, waving, hoping someone would stop. I never told anyone about what I saw. Not my friends, not my family. What could I even say? That the road itself was alive? That a bus stop can swallow you whole and spit out your belongings miles away? They'd laugh, shake their heads, tell me I was just tired, but I know the truth. Because every time I close my eyes now, I see her again, standing there in the rain, waiting for a ride that will never come. And sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, heart racing, I hear it again. That voice. Soft. Wrong. Still waiting. It's closer now. Not behind me. Not in the distance. Inside. And I don't know how much longer I can keep driving before I end up back at that stop for good. I used to think waiting for the bus was one of the most boring things in the world. You stand there, staring at the road, watching the same cars go by. People with places to be. Faces lit up by their headlights. Warm inside their little moving boxes. And you're just stuck, waiting. But that night, boredom wasn't the problem. That night, the bus stop felt like a place I wasn't supposed to be. It was late. Too late for me to be out alone. I knew that, but I told myself it was fine. I'd stayed after school for rehearsal, then lost track of time. My mom had texted me earlier asking if I wanted her to pick me up, but I'd said no. I didn't want to bother her after her long shift. I thought the bus would be easier. Easier. God, if I'd only known. The street was almost empty, except for the buzz of a flickering streetlight above the bus stop. I stood under it, hugging my backpack against my chest like a shield. Every sound felt too loud. The wind, the rustle of leaves, the occasional car speeding past. No one slowed down. No one looked. The bus was supposed to come at 9:15. I checked the time on my phone again. 24, my stomach tightened. I told myself it was normal, that buses ran late all the time. But something about the silence around me didn't feel normal. The air felt too still, like the world was holding its breath. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, staring down the road where the bus should appear. I kept expecting to see headlights cresting the hill, but there was nothing. Just black pavement stretching on forever. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through my phone, but my hands felt clumsy. I couldn't focus. I checked the transit app. On time. That made no sense. If it was on time, it should have been here already. I don't know why I didn't just call my mom then. Pride, maybe, or guilt. Instead, I called my friend, Jess. She always picked up no matter what time it was. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice groggy. Hello? I swallowed, my throat tight. Hey, it's me. Sorry, I know it's late. There was a pause, the sound of her shifting under her blankets. What's wrong? You sound weird. I let out a shaky laugh, though nothing felt funny. I'm just waiting for the bus. It's late. I don't know. I'm kind of freaking out. Jess was quiet for a moment. Then softer. Where are you exactly? At the stop by Maple and 3rd. You know, across from that empty lot. Oh. Her voice dropped lower, uneasy. That's not a good place to wait. My chest tightened. What do you mean? She hesitated. I don't know, just people say weird stuff happens there. My brother told me once he waited for a bus that never came. He swore he was out there for hours and the time didn't add up. Like, when he finally gave up and walked home, it was almost morning. But he swore it felt like only 30 minutes. Her words made my skin crawl. I forced a laugh, trying to brush it off. Yeah, well, maybe your brother just fell asleep. Maybe, she said. But she didn't sound convinced. I turned, glancing back at the empty lot. The grass was overgrown, wild, and the chain-link fence around it leaned in strange angles, broken in places. Beyond it was just darkness, a hollow kind of dark, as if nothing existed past the edge of the lot. Jess, I whispered. I don't like this. Then leave, she said quickly. Call your mom. Go to the gas station up the street and wait there. I opened my mouth to answer, but something stopped me. It was faint at first, a sound, like the low hiss of brakes. My head snapped toward the road. Far down the street, a pair of lights flickered into view. My chest loosened with relief. Oh my God, it's here! I breathed into the phone. Jess didn't say anything. I watched the lights grow brighter, closer. The bus moved slow, too slow, as if it was drifting. My smile faltered. There was something strange about the way it moved. The headlights didn't bounce the way they normally did on uneven asphalt. They just glided steady, almost too smooth. Still, I told myself I was being stupid. It was a bus, that's all. As it drew nearer, I realized the bus was completely empty. Through the wide front window, I saw no driver, no passengers. Just rows of seats bathed in dull yellow light. My stomach dropped. Jess, I whispered, clutching the phone tighter. I don't see anyone driving it. Static hissed on the line. I pulled the phone away, frowned at the screen. The call was still connected, but her voice was gone. Jess, hello? Nothing. Just a faint crackle, like breathing buried in static. I felt frozen, my feet refusing to move. The bus slowed as it reached the stop, its doors creaking open with a hiss. The sound cut through the silence, sharp and wrong. Inside, the lights flickered. The seats looked stained, old, but not in the way I remembered city buses. They looked unused, like they'd been sitting for years. The air around me grew colder. My breath fogged out in front of me. I clutched my backpack, heart pounding. Jess, I whispered again, though I knew she couldn't hear me. What do I do? The static shifted, a faint whisper threading through it. My name. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the pavement, screen still glowing. I didn't dare pick it up. The bus waited, engine idling low like a growl. The open door yawned wide. Every instinct screamed at me not to get on. But I also knew, deep in my gut, that the bus wasn't going to leave until I did. I took a shaky step back. The streetlight above flickered harder, buzzing loud in my ears. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending toward the bus. I couldn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, the lights of the bus blinked out. The engine cut. Darkness swallowed everything. The silence was deafening. When my eyes adjusted, the bus was gone, completely. The road stretched empty, the lot across the street yawning black and hollow. I stumbled back against the pole of the bus stop, gasping. My phone lay face down on the ground. I bent to grab it, hands shaking. The screen was cracked. The call was still open, and Jess's voice finally came through, clear, sharp, and terrified. "Hello? Are you there? Oh my God, answer me!" I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat was locked tight. She kept talking, her words rushing, panicked. "Get out of there, please, don't wait. Don't wait for it." I swallowed hard, finally forcing a whisper out. "Jess, it was here." Silence. Then, in a voice that didn't belong to her, low and warped, the line answered, "I know." The call ended. I stood there, the night pressing in around me, my heart slamming against my ribs. My legs finally unfroze, and I ran. I didn't care where. I just needed to get away from that stop, that empty lot, that silence that felt alive. But even as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following. Not footsteps, not a shadow, just waiting. Like the bus wasn't gone. Like it was still out there, somewhere down the road, waiting for me to get back in line. When I finally made it home that night, I thought I could leave it all behind. The empty bus, the silence on the phone, that voice that wasn't Jess's. I told myself it was just exhaustion, or maybe a trick of the light. My mind had always been quick to spin shadows into monsters, but no matter how hard I tried to forget, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. I didn't tell my mom what happened. I couldn't. She already thought I was too dramatic, too easily spooked. If I told her about the bus that appeared and then vanished, she'd look at me the way she always did, half worried, half annoyed. So I swallowed it down. I told myself it was nothing. The next morning, though, my phone buzzed with a text from Jess. "Are you okay? You hung up on me last night." My chest tightened. I typed back. I didn't hang up. The call ended. Her reply came quick. "I heard you whispering." Then the line cut. Whispering. I didn't dare ask what she'd heard. For a couple days, I tried to go on like normal. School, homework, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was restless, paranoid. Every time I walked past a bus stop, I felt my pulse spike. I couldn't even look at them without imagining those empty seats glowing under yellow lights. Then, 3 days later, I heard something that cracked me open all over again. I was in the library, flipping through a textbook when two kids at the next table started whispering about a weird backpack found at a bus stop across town. "Cops taped it off and everything," one said. "They thought it might be a bomb or something, but it was just clothes and a notebook." The other one snickered. "Who leaves a notebook at a bus stop?" My stomach twisted. My hands felt cold, slippery against the pages of my book. I don't know why, but I knew. Before they even said the location, I knew it was mine. After school, I rode with Jess to check. We told her mom we were just going to grab snacks, but really, we were heading miles away, to the bus stop they'd mentioned. When we got there, my breath stopped. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze, tied around the pole of the shelter. A single officer leaned against his car nearby, bored, scrolling his phone. On the bench inside the stop sat a clear evidence bag. Inside it was my backpack. I felt my knees weaken. "That's mine," I whispered. Jess's eyes went wide. "Wait, are you serious?" I nodded, numb. It was definitely mine. The little keychain of a chipped blue star, the tear along the side pocket, the faded marker stains. But I hadn't left it here. I hadn't been anywhere near this part of town, and yet, there it was. I thought about running up to the officer, demanding it back, but something inside me froze. I didn't want to explain, didn't want to say out loud that it had disappeared. Jess touched my arm, her voice low. "Maybe you dropped it on the bus? Maybe someone found it and—" "No, I cut in, shaking my head. I had it when I ran home that night. I know I did. She went quiet, studying me like she wasn't sure if I believed myself. The officer eventually noticed us staring. He straightened, eyes narrowing. Jess tugged my sleeve, pulling me back. Come on. We shouldn't be here. We left before he could ask questions, but the image of that bag burned into me. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what might still be inside. My homework, my water bottle, my earbuds. My journal. My journal. The thought made me sick. That was private. No one should see the things I wrote in there. But the next morning, before school, I got my answer, because sitting on the front porch was a plain manila envelope. I froze when I saw it, my breath catching. It had no return address. Just my name scrawled in messy ink across the front. I crouched, hands trembling, and picked it up. Inside was a stack of papers, photocopies, of my notebook. I shuffled through them, each page more frantic than the last. My normal messy handwriting, math notes, doodles, random thoughts, but then it shifted. Somewhere in the middle, things I didn't remember writing. Sentences scribbled over and over. He won't let me go. He won't let me go. He won't let me go. Dozens of times. Some lines shaky, like written in a moving vehicle. Some pressed so hard the paper almost tore. My throat closed. I didn't write those words. I didn't. But it was my handwriting. I felt dizzy. Like the world around me had tilted. That day at school, I kept glancing over my shoulder, certain someone was watching me. I couldn't eat. Couldn't focus. Jess kept whispering questions. But I didn't know what to tell her. Finally, after the last bell, I dragged her into the bathroom, locked the door, and shoved the copies at her. She flipped through them, her eyes going wide. This is messed up. Are you sure you didn't? I didn't, I snapped too fast. My voice echoed against the tiles. I didn't write this. I swear, she looked at me, pale, lips pressed tight. Then who did? I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I don't know. But it's my handwriting. She hugged herself uneasy. Maybe you blacked out? Maybe you wrote it and don't remember? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the pages apart. Instead, I whispered, no, something's wrong. It's not me. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me flinch. My phone stayed on my pillow, Jess's number ready to dial. Around 3 in the morning, I sat up, heart pounding. Because I swore I heard the hiss of brakes outside, I crept to the window, breath fogging the glass. There was nothing, just the empty street. But when I turned back to my desk, my stomach dropped, because my journal was sitting there. The same one I thought was in police custody. Inside that backpack. It hadn't been there before. My hands shook as I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Class notes, sketches. But then I reached the middle, and the words clawed at me again. He won't let me go. He won't let me go. He won't let me go. This time, the ink was fresh, and on the very last page, scrawled across the whole sheet in letters that didn't quite look like mine, was a new message. You came so close, I dropped the book like it was burning. Sleep never came after that. I sat in my bed, staring at the door, at the window, waiting for something to happen, waiting for the sound of a bus pulling up outside. But the night dragged on, silent. The only sound was my own breathing, shallow and uneven, and in that silence, the words echoed in my head until dawn broke. He won't let me go. Years have passed since that night. You'd think time would dull the edges, blur the fear into something softer, easier to carry. That's what everyone tells you, that wounds fade. But this one hasn't. It's still sharp, still lodged in me like a splinter that never works its way out. I don't talk about it anymore. Not with Jess, not with anyone. People move on and they expect you to do the same. But I never really did. Because deep down I knew it wasn't over, and I was right. It happened again last winter. I'd been driving home late from work, rain hammering down so hard my wipers couldn't keep up. The roads were slick and shining, the kind of night where you lean forward over the wheel, straining to see more than a few feet ahead. My headlights cut through sheets of water, and the world felt small, boxed in by darkness and rain. Every mile I told myself I was almost home. Just a little farther. But then I saw it. The bus stop. The same one from all those years ago, Maple and 3rd, across from that empty lot. Even in the storm, I recognized it instantly. The tilted pole, the cracked pavement, the streetlight buzzing weak and sickly above, and standing under it was a girl. She looked young, 16, maybe 17. Her hair clung to her face, soaked through, her clothes plastered to her skin. She hugged herself, shivering, her backpack slipping off one shoulder. My chest clenched. She raised her arm, waving desperately at me as I approached. Not the casual wave of a friend, but sharp, frantic, like a drowning person reaching for a lifeline. For a split second, I was back in my own body at 16, waiting in the cold, heart racing, hoping someone, anyone, would notice me. My hands tightened on the wheel. I slowed down. The rain blurred everything, but her face. Her face looked so familiar. Pale, wide-eyed, her lips moving like she was mouthing something I couldn't hear. Part of me wanted to pull over, roll down the window, help her. Another part screamed at me not to. I blinked hard against the rain, and just as my headlights swept across her, she vanished. 1 second she was there, the next, gone. No splash of footsteps. No movement into the lot. Nothing. Just an empty bus stop under a flickering light. My stomach dropped. I hit the brakes too hard, the car fishtailing slightly on the wet road before steadying. My hands shook as I stared in the rearview mirror. The stop was empty, but I swear to you, I saw her. I pulled over a block later, chest heaving, trying to catch my breath. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the rain. For a long time, I just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring out into the storm. And I thought about all of it. The night the bus came for me. The backpack that turned up miles away. The notebook filled with words I don't remember writing. He won't let me go. That phrase had haunted me for years. And in that moment, I finally understood something I hadn't wanted to face. It wasn't just about me. It never was. That stop. It takes people. Or maybe it marks them. I don't know. But it doesn't forget. And whoever that girl was, whether she was real or just some echo, I knew she was caught in it too. The thought hollowed me out. Because if it could reach her, it could reach anyone. It could come back for me. I forced myself to drive the rest of the way home, but every shadow on the side of the road looked like her. Every hiss of my tires on the wet asphalt sounded like brakes. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I was older now, worn down. But I saw the same fear in my eyes that I'd had at 16, and in the faint glow of the dashboard, I swear I saw words etched into the fog of the glass beside me. 4 words, smeared like a finger had traced them from the inside. He won't let go, not me, go, like a warning. Or a promise. I wiped the glass with my sleeve, heart hammering. But the words smeared deeper, sinking into the fog like they belonged there. I don't remember getting out of the car. I just remember stumbling into my house, locking every door, every window, and sitting in the dark until the rain stopped. And now, months later, I keep thinking about that girl, the way she waved, desperate. The way her mouth moved like she was begging for something. I can't stop asking myself, what if I was supposed to stop? What if she was trying to tell me something? Or worse, what if she was me? Not me now, not me then, but some version of me still trapped at that stop, still waiting for a bus that never comes. I try not to drive that road anymore, but sometimes late at night when the world is quiet, I swear I hear it. The hiss of brakes, the groan of doors opening, the low hum of an engine that shouldn't be there, and when I close my eyes, I see her again, standing in the rain, waving, fading before the headlights touch her, and I know it's not over. It will never be over, because he won't let go. I don't really know why I stopped at that motel. I had been driving for 10 hours straight, the kind of drive where the lines on the road start to blur, where your eyes sting and you catch yourself blinking too long, almost drifting. I wasn't planning on stopping there. Honestly, I wasn't planning on stopping at all. But then I saw the sign. A red neon buzz flickering against the dark stretch of empty road. Sunset Inn. The word sunset was half dead, glowing weakly, but the inn part glared bright like a crooked smile in the dark. I told myself it was only for a few hours. A shower. A bed. Silence. I pulled into the cracked parking lot, the gravel crunching under my tires. The building wasn't much. 2 floors, long and flat, with faded paint and rust stains crawling down the sides. Doors all lined up in a row, each one lit by a single yellow bulb. It looked tired. That's the only way I can describe it. A building that had seen too much but was too stubborn to fall down. Inside, the lobby was even smaller than I expected. A desk that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks, a fake plant in the corner, and a soda machine humming with a low metallic rattle. The clerk was behind the counter. He didn't look up when I walked in. His head was bent low, lit by the glow of a small TV beside him. Some late-night infomercial played, the sound turned down so low I could barely make it out. "Need a room?" I said. My voice sounded louder than I meant it to, like the walls were swallowing every sound. The clerk moved slow, like he was underwater. He slid a battered guest book across the counter. I signed my name, paid in cash. He handed me a key, an actual metal key attached to a chipped green tag with the number 12 scratched into the surface. His eyes never really met mine. Just a glance, then back to the TV. "Checkout's at 11, he muttered. That was it. No welcome, no smile. Just the faint buzz of the TV. I carried my bag down the corridor. The air smelled faintly of mildew, with something sweeter underneath, like old fruit left too long on the counter. The walls were painted beige once, but years of grime had turned them gray. My shoes made soft squeaks on the worn carpet. Room 12. The lock stuck at first, like the door didn't want to open. But after a jiggle, it gave in, and I stepped inside. The room was as cheap as I expected. A bed with a sagging mattress. A small TV bolted to the wall. A single chair pushed up against the window, its upholstery torn in long strips. The air was heavy, like the vents hadn't worked in years. But I didn't care. I tossed my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and lay on the bed. For a while, I just stared at the ceiling. The hum of the neon sign outside seeped faintly through the thin curtains. My body felt heavy, drained from the road. My head throbbed from the monotony of the drive. I told myself I'd just close my eyes. Just for a minute. Sleep came fast. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. The clock on the nightstand was broken, its red numbers frozen at 11:47. The room was dark, except for the thin strip of light leaking under the door from the corridor. I heard something. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. A voice, muffled, through the wall. I lay still, listening. It grew clearer. A man's voice, low at first, then louder, agitated, like he was talking to someone, but the words weren't sharp enough for me to understand. Then, a scream. It came so suddenly that my chest clenched tight. A full-bodied, raw scream ripping through the silence of the motel. I sat up, my heart pounding. The sound came from the room next to mine. Room 11. I froze, waiting. The scream went on, breaking, cracking, as if the person's throat was tearing apart. Then it cut off like someone had slammed a hand over their mouth. Silence. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. My breathing was too loud in my ears. Then a noise followed. A heavy, rhythmic thud. Something slamming against the wall between our rooms. Once, twice, 3 times. The headboard, maybe. Or a body. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe right. The sound stopped as suddenly as it started. The silence that followed was worse than the scream. I sat there, in the dark, gripping the edge of the mattress, staring at the thin wall that separated me from whatever had just happened. Should I call the front desk? Should I check? Should I do something? I couldn't. My body wouldn't let me. It was like my limbs belonged to someone else. I waited for footsteps in the corridor, for someone to rush by, banging on doors, shouting for help. But the motel was still, quiet. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe minutes, maybe an hour. Time felt broken in that room. Finally, I heard it. The sound of a door opening. The creak of hinges. Room 11. Soft footsteps in the hall. Slow, dragging. They passed by my door. Stopped for a moment. The strip of light under my door flickered as the shadow paused there. I held my breath, every muscle locked. Then the footsteps continued. Down the corridor, fading, and silence returned. I stayed awake the rest of the night. When the sun rose, it leaked through the thin curtains, painting the room a pale gray. I opened my door slowly, peering into the corridor. Empty. Silent. Room 11's door was closed. The same as before. I thought about knocking. I thought about asking the clerk at the front desk if he had heard anything, but I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my bag, left the key on the nightstand, and walked straight to my car. The clerk didn't even look up as I passed. The TV was still on, humming quietly in that empty lobby. When I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. The motel sat there, squatting in the morning light, doors lined up like watching eyes. I drove away. But the sound of that scream, the raw tearing sound of it, has stayed with me ever since, like it got trapped somewhere inside my head. And sometimes, late at night when the world is quiet, I still hear it. I should have just driven away. That morning, after the scream, after the shadow lingered outside my door, I should have never looked back. But I didn't leave right away. Something kept me there. It was more than that. It was like the motel had gotten inside me just a little, like I needed to know what had happened in that room. I went back to the front desk. The same clerk was there, sitting slouched in his chair. The TV was still on, playing the morning news now. His eyes were fixed on the screen, unblinking, like he'd been sitting there all night. I cleared my throat. "Hey, last night." He didn't look at me. "I was in 12, I said. There was a scream from the room next to mine. That got his attention. Slowly, his head turned. His eyes met mine for the first time, dull and bloodshot, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "Next to you?" he asked. His voice was dry, like he hadn't used it much. "Yeah, room 11. I swear. Someone was in there, screaming." The clerk leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. He studied me for a long moment, then shook his head. 11's been empty for years. I felt a shiver crawl up my arms. "That's impossible." "I heard someone. They were banging on the wall." He cut me off with a flat voice. "Nobody stays in 11. "Not anymore." I stared at him, waiting for him to explain. But he just turned back to the TV, like the conversation was finished. I wanted to push, to ask him why. But something about the way he said it, the finality in his tone, stopped me. I walked back out into the parking lot. The sun was bright now, too bright, bouncing off the cracked windshields of a few scattered cars. The whole place looked different in daylight, almost harmless. But when I glanced at room 11, I swear I saw the curtain move. Just a flicker. Like someone standing too close to the window, watching. I told myself it was nothing, just the draft or my tired eyes. Still, I couldn't shake it. That night, I stayed again. I told myself it was easier than finding another motel. I told myself I was too tired to drive, but deep down, I wanted to hear it again. The scream. I lay in the dark, staring at the wall between my bed and room 11. Every sound made me twitch. The hum of the old fridge, the groan of the pipes, the whisper of wind against the glass. Midnight came and went. I almost convinced myself it had been a dream, that I hadn't really heard it, that I was losing my grip from the long drive. Then it came again, the voice, low at first like a muffled argument, then sharper, louder, a man's voice, the same one as before, and then the scream. It ripped through the night, jagged and raw, so much worse than I remembered. It filled the room, vibrating in my chest, pulling me upright in bed. I pressed my hand over my mouth, as if that could somehow block it out. The banging followed. Against the wall, against the floor. The sound of furniture crashing, wood splintering, my heart hammered. Sweat clung to my skin. I wanted to leave, to grab my bag and run to the car, but I couldn't. I was frozen, listening. Then, just like before, silence. No door opening this time. No footsteps in the corridor. Just silence, heavy and absolute. I sat in the dark until morning light spilled through the curtains. The next day I tried again. "Who's in that room?" I asked the clerk. My voice was sharp this time, harsher than I meant. I heard it again. "Don't tell me it's empty. Don't lie to me." The clerk's lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes didn't move from the TV. "I told you," he muttered. "No one's in 11. Hasn't been for years. Then who the hell is screaming?" He didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. Something in me snapped. I slammed my hand against the desk. The sound echoed in the tiny lobby, sharp and sudden. The clerk finally turned his head. His face was pale in the morning light, his eyes tired, almost hollow. "Some rooms," he said softly, "don't want to be disturbed." The way he said it chilled me, like it was a warning, or maybe a truth he'd learned the hard way. I stood there gripping the counter, trying to make sense of it, but there was nothing else. No explanation, no answers, just that one sentence. I should have left then, but I didn't. Night came again. I stayed in 12, sitting up in bed, waiting. This time, I was ready. When the scream tore through the walls, I jumped to my feet. My hands were shaking, my breath ragged, but I forced myself toward the door. I pulled it open, stepping into the corridor. It was empty, silent. The yellow bulbs flickered above me. I stood outside room 11. My chest felt tight, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The screams had stopped the moment I stepped into the hall. I waited, listening. Then, a whisper, right against the other side of the door, so close I could feel the vibration through the wood. It was too faint to make out words, but it was there. A voice, male, low. I pressed my ear closer. The whisper cut off. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, a sharp knock. From inside the room. 3 hard raps, inches from my ear. I stumbled back, my chest seizing. My breath came in ragged bursts. The door stayed closed. The corridor stayed silent. I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone. Finally, I forced myself back to my room. I shut the door, locked it, and sat against it with my back pressed hard, as if something might push through at any second. The rest of the night stretched long and endless. Every creak, every shift of the building made me jolt. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. In the morning, the motel looked the same, calm, harmless. Room 11's door was closed. Its curtains still. I didn't ask the clerk anything this time. I didn't need to, because I already knew. The room wasn't empty. It had never been empty. And whatever was inside, it didn't want to be left alone, but it also didn't want me to leave. I thought the screams were the worst part, but I was wrong. What came next was worse, because it wasn't just me anymore. It started the night she knocked on my door. I hadn't been sleeping much. By then, I was just lying awake every night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the voice in room 11 to start. My body felt wired, like I'd had a gallon of coffee, even though I hadn't touched a drop. Every sound in the motel set me on edge. The plumbing, groaning, the faint hum of that buzzing neon outside, even the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then, a knock at my door. It was soft at first, almost uncertain. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that whoever it was had the wrong room, but then it came again. Firmer, a steady rhythm. I froze. When I finally worked up the courage to open the door, she was standing there. A woman, mid-30s maybe, pale, with long dark hair that fell in messy strands across her face. Her clothes looked rumpled, like she'd been traveling. But her eyes were wide and tired, the same way mine felt. She looked past me, toward my room, as if she was checking to make sure no one else was inside. Then she leaned close and whispered, "You hear it too, don't you?" I didn't know what to say. My mouth felt dry, like my tongue didn't want to move. She nodded slowly, like my silence was enough of an answer. "I'm in 15, she said. I thought I was going crazy, but I heard it last night. The screaming, the banging. You heard it too." Her voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard, then nodded. For the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. Someone else had heard it. Someone else had seen, or felt, whatever was happening in that cursed room. We talked for a few minutes, standing there in the dim corridor under the yellow bulbs. Her name was Claire. She was driving cross-country to visit her sister. She'd stopped at the motel because she was too tired to keep going. She told me she hadn't slept since that first night. Every time she closed her eyes, the screams pulled her awake. She said it felt like the voice wasn't just in the walls. It was in her head, too. I told her about the clerk, about how he insisted room 11 had been empty for years. Her face went pale at that. That's impossible. I saw someone go in there. My stomach turned. You saw them? She nodded. A man, tall, kind of thin. He walked past me when I was checking in. He had the key to 11. I remember because I glanced at his tag when he dropped it. He was real. I swear it. We stood in silence after that. The hallway felt colder somehow, the buzzing lights overhead pressing down on us. Finally, she whispered, "Whatever's happening here, it's not just noise." I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, there were police cars in the lot, 2 cruisers, their lights off, parked crooked across the broken pavement. I saw 2 officers talking to the clerk inside the lobby. His face looked even paler than usual, like someone had drained all the blood out of him. I hesitated, then walked closer. The officers turned when they saw me. One of them, a heavy-set man with a trimmed mustache, asked if I was staying there. I said yes. "Did you see or hear anything unusual last night?" he asked. The question caught in my throat. How was I supposed to answer that? What counted as unusual in a place like this? Before I could say anything, Claire stepped into the lobby. Her hair was tied back now, but her face looked drawn, hollow. She told the officers she'd heard the screams. She told them about the man she saw. She said she thought someone was in danger. Her voice trembled, but she was steady enough to get the words out. The clerk just stood there, silent. The officers exchanged a look. Then they said they'd check room 11. We followed them down the corridor. My stomach twisted with every step. When they reached the door, one of them knocked hard. No answer. He knocked again. Then he slid a master key into the lock. The door creaked open. The room inside was dark, still, empty. The officers stepped inside, their flashlights cutting across the walls. Dust floated in the beams. The bed was neatly made, the corners tucked in tight. No bags. No clothes. Nothing. The air smelled faintly of mold and cleaning chemicals. I stood in the doorway, my hands trembling. "It was here," I said. My voice cracked. "I heard it." She heard it. Someone was in here, but the room was bare. One of the officers crouched down, running his light under the bed. Nothing. Another opened the bathroom door. The mirror was streaked, the sink stained, but the rest was empty. "Looks like it hasn't been used in years," the mustached officer said. Claire's face went white. She shook her head over and over. No, that's wrong. I saw him. I saw him go in here. He was real, but the police didn't find a trace. No footprints in the dust. No sign of anyone staying there. Finally, one officer turned back to us. His tone was calm, practiced. "Ma'am, sir, it's been a long drive for both of you. Sometimes exhaustion does strange things to the mind. You may have misheard, or misremembered." The words hit like ice. They didn't believe us. Claire tried to argue, but it was useless. The officers shrugged, said they'd make a note of it, and left. We were standing in the corridor again, staring at the closed door of room 11. Her eyes met mine, and I saw the same thing I felt inside. Fear, yes, but also a question neither of us wanted to say out loud. Were we losing our minds? That night, the screams came again. This time, they were louder, longer, like whoever was in there knew we'd tried to call for help, and now they were punishing us for it. Claire knocked on my door in the middle of it. I let her in. We sat together on the edge of the bed, listening. Our hands gripped the blanket so tight my knuckles turned white. The walls shook with the sound, banging, screaming, sobbing. The whole building seemed to breathe with it. When it stopped, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, frozen, afraid to even breathe too loudly. Eventually, she fell asleep in the chair by the window, her head tilted against the glass. I stayed awake, watching her. listening to the silence press in, and then something happened that I still can't explain. When morning came, she was gone. Not just from my room, from the motel, her bag, her car, her shoes by the door. Everything was gone. I asked the clerk where she went. He looked at me with those hollow eyes and said, "No one checked into 15. "That room's been empty," I argued. I shouted. I told him her name, what she looked like, what car she drove. He just stared at me, unmoving. I ran to 15 myself. I pounded on the door until my fists hurt. Finally, I forced it open. Empty. The bed made, no bag, no clothes, no Claire. It was like she'd never been there at all. I called the police myself. They came back, searched the lot, checked the register. There was no record of her. No sign she'd ever checked in. No one remembered seeing her except me. One of the officers pulled me aside, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Son," he said softly, "maybe you need some rest." I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag them into my head and make them hear what I'd heard. But the words died in my throat. When they left, I stood alone in that cracked parking lot, staring at the row of rooms. The yellow bulbs flickered weakly overhead. Room 11 sat quiet, its curtain drawn. And for the first time, I realized something that made my stomach twist into knots. The motel didn't just trap people. Inside, it erased them. Years passed before I ever let myself think about that motel again. I drove away the morning Claire disappeared, and I swore I would never go back. I told myself it had been exhaustion, stress, maybe even a shared hallucination, if such a thing exists. I buried it under work, under miles of new roads, under time. But time doesn't erase everything. Some memories cling like stains you can't scrub out. The scream stayed with me, that raw, tearing sound of it. And so did the way Claire looked at me that last night, the quiet relief in her eyes when she realized she wasn't alone. And then she was gone. I built a life after that. Sold products, made money, moved from city to city, motel to motel. But something followed me. Some nights, when I stayed in unfamiliar rooms, I'd wake at 3 a.m. with the sound of banging in my ears. Always 3 knocks, always on the wall right beside me. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew the motel had left a mark on me. And then decades later, I saw the name again. It was in a newspaper article I wasn't even meant to read. I was in a diner off the highway, sipping cold coffee, waiting for a meeting. Someone had left the paper folded on the counter. A headline caught my eye. "Local motel faces demolition. Sunset Inn." The photo was grainy, but I knew it instantly. The sagging roof, the rust-streaked paint, the row of identical doors under flickering yellow lights. Something inside me stirred, a weight I thought I had buried. Before I could stop myself, I was driving there. The motel looked worse than I remembered. The sign was gone. The lot was cracked and empty, weeds pushing through the gravel. Most of the windows were boarded up, but the building was still there, still waiting. The front office door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and dust. The desk was still there, though the TV was gone. The walls peeled in long strips, curling like dead skin. Behind the desk was a small filing cabinet, rusted, half open. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I already knew what I'd find. Inside were guest records, old yellowed paper bound in thick ledgers, each one filled with names scrawled in fading ink. The years stretched back further than I expected. I flipped through the pages, scanning the names, the dates, the room numbers, and then my chest went cold. The missing people. The ones I remembered from the news. A trucker who vanished in '78. A young couple in '85. A schoolteacher in the early '90s. Their names were all there. Every one of them had stayed in room 12, my room. I gripped the ledger so tight the paper crinkled under my fingers. My throat felt dry, my skin damp. It wasn't room 11. Not the room with the screams, not the one I thought all the horror lived in. It was mine. Room 12. I flipped faster, scanning more pages. Over and over again, the same pattern. People checked into 12, and then they were never seen again. And then I saw it. My name, written in faded ink. My handwriting, shaky after a long drive, scrawled across the line. I had signed that book. paid cash. Checked into room 12. But the date wasn't right. It wasn't from decades ago. It was recent. Far too recent. A chill rippled through me. My vision blurred. For a moment, I thought I might be sick right there on the dusty floor. I staggered back from the desk, the ledger still open in my hands. The door behind me creaked. I spun around, but the lobby was empty. Dust hung in the air, glowing faintly in the shafts of light slipping through the boarded windows. And then, faintly, I heard it. A knock. 3 hard raps. Against the wall behind me, the wall that separated the office from the row of rooms. I dropped the ledger. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, the pages flipping on their own, stopping halfway through as if caught by unseen hands. The knock came again, louder this time, and then a scream, the same scream I had heard all those years ago. The same voice, tearing through the silence like a wound splitting open. It was coming from room 12. My room. I stumbled out of the office into the corridor. The doors stood in a row, most of them cracked or broken, but 12 looked untouched. Its paint was fresh, its curtain neat, as if time hadn't touched it at all. I stood there staring at it, my chest heaving, my palms slick with sweat. Part of me wanted to open it, to see inside, to know. But another part of me, the deeper part, knew I already belonged to it. Because that's what the motel does. It doesn't take you all at once. It waits. It lets you leave. Lets you think you're free. And then, when you least expect it, it pulls you back. I walked closer. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob, and that's when I saw it. Through the thin strip of curtain, a figure stood inside. Tall, thin, motionless, watching me. I stumbled back, choking on my own breath. The figure didn't move. Just stood there, half hidden in shadow, and then slowly, the curtain fell shut. I ran, out the corridor, across the lot, into my car. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. When I finally drove away, the motel shrank in my rearview mirror, until it was just a dark smear against the horizon. But I know it isn't gone, because I saw that ledger. I saw my name written there, and I know that one day, whether I want it or not, I'll be back in room 12, and when I am, I won't leave again. I was driving home late that night, later than I should have been. The highway stretched out in front of me like a dark river, empty except for the occasional pair of headlights that drifted past in the opposite lane. My radio had gone static a few miles back, and I didn't bother fixing it. The silence felt heavy, but I told myself it was fine. Just another long drive after a long day. The road seemed endless. Asphalt, white lines, and the faint glow of my headlights pulling me forward. I kept glancing at the clock on the dashboard, watching the minutes crawl. It felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, like the distance between me and home kept shifting further away. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, just past the curve, there was a car pulled over on the shoulder. Hazard lights flashing in the dark. The red blink. Blink, blink, cutting through the night like a weak heartbeat. At first, I thought nothing of it. Cars break down. People pull over. But as I got closer, something about it made me slow down. The way it sat at an angle, almost like it had stopped in a hurry. The driver's door was shut, but not quite, hanging just a crack open as if someone had stepped out quickly and never came back. I drove past it at first, just a glance as I rolled by, but the image stuck in my head. An empty road, a stranded car, hazard lights blinking like a distress signal, and no one around. I kept driving, trying to shake it off, but guilt crawled in. What if someone needed help? A flat tire, an empty tank, a medical emergency. Out here, there weren't many places to stop, and cell service was patchy. I looked at my phone, 1 bar, maybe 2. Not enough to trust. A few seconds later, I pulled over. I don't even remember making the decision. My hands just turned the wheel like something tugged at me. I stopped on the shoulder a little ways ahead of the stranded car, my hazard lights joining its lonely rhythm. Blink, blink. Like we were 2 ships on the same Dead Sea. I sat there for a moment, staring at my rearview mirror. The car behind me looked lifeless, dark except for the pulsing red lights. No movement. No sign of anyone. The highway was silent. I told myself maybe they walked. Maybe someone already picked them up. But then, why leave the car door cracked open? Why leave the hazards running until the battery died? I got out. The night air hit me, cold, damp, and heavier than I expected. The kind of air that clings to your clothes. My shoes crunched against gravel as I walked back toward the car. My own hazard lights flickered against the asphalt, painting the scene in dull red and black. Each blink made the car ahead of me appear, vanish, appear again, like it wasn't steady, like it was phasing in and out of the world. The closer I got, the stranger it looked. The car wasn't old, not rusty or broken down, just a regular sedan, clean, maybe a year or two old. All 4 tires were fine. No dents, no signs of an accident. It wasn't dead on the road. It had been parked deliberately. I stepped up to the driver's side. The door was cracked open just enough that I could see the sliver of interior light glowing inside, that faint yellow glow that cars give off when they're waiting, like they're holding their breath. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small against the emptiness. No answer. I pushed the door open. It gave way too easily, swinging wider than I expected, like it had been waiting for me. The inside smelled faintly of perfume and something else, something metallic, sour. The keys were still in the ignition, not turned but just sitting there. A pair of sunglasses rested on the console, a half-empty water bottle in the cup holder. Someone had been here recently. The driver's seat was pushed back slightly, like whoever sat there had gotten out quickly, knees scraping the wheel as they hurried away. I leaned closer. My reflection stared back at me from the rearview mirror. My face looked pale, stretched, distorted by the faint interior light. For some reason, that bothered me. It felt like I was looking at someone else. I pulled back and scanned the area. The fields on either side of the highway stretched into blackness. No streetlights, no houses, just open land and silence. If someone had walked away from this car, where would they have gone? I checked the back seat. Empty. Nothing but a crumpled jacket tossed across the seat, sleeves bent like arms reaching. The trunk was shut. I didn't touch it. Something about the thought of opening it made my stomach twist. I stood there, blinking with the hazards, and realized I couldn't hear anything. Not the wind, not crickets, not even the faint hum of engines in the distance. Just silence, and the slow pulse of red light. I should have left right then. I should have gotten back in my car and driven away. But I didn't. Something in me wanted to know more. I reached for the glove compartment. Papers, insurance forms, a map, a flashlight. The flashlight was cheap, plastic, but when I clicked it on, the beam cut through the dark. I stepped back and swept the field with the light. The grass swayed faintly, though there was no breeze. The beam caught on broken glass near the shoulder. I walked over. A phone case lay in the dirt, empty, just the shell, no phone inside. My throat went dry. Someone had been here. Someone had dropped this. I turned back to the car. The hazard lights blinked slower now. Or maybe it just felt slower. Each pulse dragged longer, leaving me more time to see the empty road stretch into forever. I noticed something I hadn't before. Smudges along the side of the car. Not dirt, not grease, streaks, like handprints dragging along the paint. Some small, some larger. Fingers pulled downward, uneven, like someone had been gripping the car as they slipped away. I crouched down, shining the flashlight along the marks. They trailed toward the back. Toward the trunk? I froze. The air pressed heavier around me the way it does when a storm is about to break. My skin prickled, though the night was still. I stood there, staring at the trunk, my hand trembling on the flashlight. I told myself, don't open it. Just walk away. Get in your car and leave. But then, I heard it, a sound. Faint, muffled, coming from inside the trunk. It wasn't words. It wasn't clear. Just a low thump like something shifting, like something trapped. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but my legs didn't move. My breath came fast, clouding in the cold air. The hazards blinked, 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 painting the trunk in red. Another sound, softer this time. A scrape. Something alive was in there. I stepped back. My whole body screamed to get away, but my mind locked on the trunk, on the fact that someone might be inside. Someone who needed help. My hand reached out. Fingers brushed the metal. Cold, smooth, too smooth. The trunk felt wrong, like it didn't belong to the same car. I hesitated, and that's when every instinct I had told me to stop, because in the silence between the hazard blinks, I realized the sound wasn't coming from inside the trunk. It was coming from the ground beneath it. I stumbled back, my flashlight beam shaking. The dirt under the car looked disturbed, uneven, like something had been pushed down into it. Covered over in a hurry, the noise came again. A faint, hollow knock. Not from the trunk. From the earth, I dropped the flashlight. The beam spun wildly, cutting across the fields, across the open highway before landing back on the car. For a moment, in the flash of hazard lights, I thought I saw something. Movement, just at the edge of the road. A figure standing in the distance, still as stone, facing me. But when the light blinked again, it was gone. The hazards kept pulsing. The trunk sat closed. The ground stayed silent, and me. I couldn't breathe. I turned, ran back to my car, slammed the door shut, and started the engine. As I pulled away, my headlights swept across the stranded car one last time. The hazard lights were still blinking, but now they weren't in rhythm with mine. They were slower, offbeat, like the car was breathing. I didn't stop again. I didn't look back, but in my rearview mirror, I swear I saw the driver's side door swinging shut, like someone had finally come back. I should have kept driving that night. I should have left the stranded car behind and never looked back. But when I pulled away, when the highway stretched ahead of me in that endless black, I couldn't shake the sound I'd heard, that faint knock from the earth, that strange movement in the distance. It followed me in my chest, heavy, pounding, louder than the hum of my engine. I told myself I'd imagined it, that the dark plays tricks. But the further I went, the worse it felt, like something unfinished was dragging me back. The blinking hazard lights burned in my memory. Each flash was still behind my eyes. A mile down, I slowed. Another mile, and I pulled over again. My hands shook on the wheel. I stared at the empty road ahead, then at the fields on either side. Stretches of black grass and nothingness. But deep inside that silence, I swore I heard it. Faint, almost swallowed by the night. A voice? It was small at first, like someone calling from far away. Not words, just the shape of a cry. Help. The sound was so thin I thought it was the wind, but it came again. A ragged cry, broken, drifting across the open fields. I should have ignored it. I should have turned my headlights forward and gone home. But my hand was already reaching for the flashlight on the passenger seat, already pushing the door open, already stepping out into the cold air. The highway behind me was empty, ahead endless. The stranded car was just a memory in the distance, swallowed by dark. But the voice, it was closer now. I pointed the flashlight toward the fields. The grass swayed, tall and sharp, shivering against the beam. My feet crunched against gravel, then sank into soil as I left the road. Each step away from the asphalt felt wrong, like I was leaving the world behind. The voice came again. Faint, breaking, like someone calling through water. It pulled me deeper into the field. My light swung side to side, catching broken stalks, patches of dirt, shadows stretching far. The ground was uneven, soft in places, as though it had been disturbed. I whispered into the night. "Hello? Who's there?" The only answer was the cry again, shaking, desperate. I walked faster, my heart pounding. But every time I thought I was close, the sound shifted. Slipping further, just out of reach. Always further ahead. "Where are you?" I shouted, louder now. The field swallowed my voice. I pushed through the grass, the blades cutting my arms, catching my clothes. My flashlight flickered across shapes. An old fence post broken in half, a rusted tin can, something white in the dirt that turned out to be bone. Animal bone, I told myself. Nothing else. The cries pulled me on. They always seemed just a few steps away, but the more I chased, the further they slipped. I couldn't tell if it was one voice or many. Sometimes it sounded like a woman. Sometimes a child. Sometimes nothing at all, just a thin whistle that vanished when I turned my head. My breath came hard. Sweat stung my forehead, though the night was cold. I stopped listening. The flashlight beam trembled in my hands. Silence. For a moment, nothing. Then, softly, almost tender, my name. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't desperate. It was whispered close to my ear, though no one stood there. I spun around, light cutting empty grass. Nothing. Just stalks bending, shifting as if someone had just passed through. My chest tightened. The voice came again, distant now, pulling me deeper. "Help me!" I walked. I don't know why. Every step felt like I was sinking. The soil grew softer, damp. The smell changed, earthy, sweet, rotting. The kind of smell you find near old graves. The cries rose again all around me now. Behind, ahead, above. They overlapped, fading and returning like a broken record. I turned in circles, trying to pin them down. My flashlight caught shapes in the dark. Shadows of figures standing among the grass. But when I swung the light, they vanished. Always gone before I could see clearly. I stopped, clutching the flashlight tight. My lungs burned. My legs trembled. The highway felt miles away. I couldn't even see its glow anymore. Just endless black fields. The cries softened. Not urgent now. Almost playful. "Here," one whispered. "Over here," another teased. Every time I followed, the voice faded further, like it was leading me on. I dropped to my knees, gripping the dirt. My light caught something in the soil, fabric. A torn piece of cloth, half buried. Pale stained, I pulled it free, my hands shaking. A shirt, small, too small. A child's shirt. My stomach turned. I dropped it, stumbling back. My foot caught on something hard. I swung the beam down, wood. An old board, rotted, half buried in earth. I scraped it away with my shoe. Beneath it was a hole, shallow, filled in roughly. The cries swelled for a moment, loud, right in my head. Then cut off. Silence again. I backed away. My heart thundered. I knew without touching it what that hole was. The disturbed soil. The stench. The shirt. Someone was buried here. My hand went numb around the flashlight. The air pressed heavy, pressing against my chest, my throat. I tried to breathe, but the field was too still. Then I heard it, not from ahead, not from behind, from below, a whisper rising through the earth. My name again, drawn out, slow, as if the soil itself was speaking it. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the light. My legs felt weak, useless. I wanted to run, but couldn't tell which way was out. The grass looked the same in every direction. The cries started again, soft, thin, fading into laughter that wasn't human. I turned in a circle, desperate, until my flashlight caught something. A shape, low to the ground. A ditch maybe 10 feet ahead. I staggered toward it, half running, half falling. The ditch opened like a wound in the earth. The smell hit first. Sweet rot, iron, dampness. My beam shook as I forced it down into the hollow, and I saw them, dozens of shapes. Not clear, not whole. Just impressions of faces, pale and wavering, mouths open in silent cries. Eyes wide, watching me. I fell back, choking. The cries rose again all around me, overlapping into a chorus. Some begging, some mocking, some screaming my name. The sound filled my head until I thought it would burst. I scrambled backward, dirt under my nails, grass tearing at my arms. The flashlight slipped, rolled into the ditch, and the beam flickered across the hollow faces one last time before vanishing into dark. The cries stopped. Silence again. I was alone. My chest heaved, my eyes burned. I forced myself to my feet, spinning in every direction. Nothing, just grass. Just black sky, but then I saw it. A faint glow, far off. Headlights, the highway. I stumbled toward it, every step like dragging stone. My legs felt numb, my ears rang. Behind me, the field stayed quiet. Too quiet. When I reached the road, the glow of my own car was waiting. Hazard lights pulsing. Blink, blink, steady, familiar. Like it had been sitting there the whole time, patient. I fell against the door, pulled it open, and collapsed inside. My hands shook so hard I could barely turn the key. The engine roared to life. The sound filled me with something close to relief. But not quite. Because even over the rumble, even as I pressed the gas, I swore I heard it again, from the fields, faint, calling my name, and this time, it was closer. I'd been driving for hours that night. The highway stretched on forever, broken only by long shadows and the glow of my headlights. My gas gauge was dipping close to empty, and the thought of running out on a back road in the middle of nowhere made my stomach tighten. When I saw the sign, gas, 12 miles, I felt a wave of relief. I turned off the highway onto a smaller road. The asphalt was cracked, lined with trees on both sides, branches twisting overhead like claws. I told myself it was fine. Just a quick detour. 12 miles, fill up the tank, maybe grab a coffee, then back on the road. But the deeper I drove, the stranger it felt. The road curved and narrowed, swallowed by woods. No other cars, no houses, just the sound of my tires rolling over cracked pavement. My GPS froze and then went blank. No service. That uneasy feeling crept in. Still, I pressed on. My fuel light blinked red now, urgent. I didn't have a choice. After what felt longer than 12 miles, the trees finally broke, opening onto a small valley. I saw lights ahead, a town. Relief washed over me. A cluster of old buildings sat around an empty street, their windows faintly glowing. But as I got closer, that relief turned to confusion. The lights were on, but the place looked deserted. I pulled into the main street, tires crunching on gravel. Storefronts lined both sides. An old diner with chrome trim, a hardware store with faded paint, a motel with a neon sign buzzing weakly. But there were no people, no cars, not even a stray animal. It felt like walking into a photograph, perfectly still. I slowed to a crawl, scanning for a gas station. My eyes caught a sign at the far end. Service station. Finally, I turned toward it, pulling up beside an old set of pumps. They looked ancient, the kind you'd see in a museum, but the lights above the station glowed bright, humming softly. A small office stood behind them, glass door shut, but the open sign flickered red. I stepped out of my car. The air hit me sharp and cold. Too cold for late summer. It smelled faintly of dust, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. "Hello?" I called. My voice echoed off the empty buildings. No answer. I tried the pump. Dead. No click, no movement. Just a hollow handle in my hand. I walked toward the office, my footsteps loud in the silence. Inside, I could see shelves lined with oil cans, a dusty counter, and a stool tipped on its side. The lights were on, but no one was there. The door gave when I pushed it, a bell above jingling weakly. "Hello?" I tried again. Nothing. I stood there listening. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the only sound. Something felt wrong. The place wasn't abandoned. Not completely. The lights, the open sign, they meant someone had been here, recently. But where were they? I left the office and looked down the street. Storefronts glowed faintly, some with neon signs flickering. The diner's sign said, "Open 24 hours." Inside, I could see booths, chrome stools, napkin dispensers. Plates and cups sat on the counter, half full, like people had just stepped away. I crossed the street. The diner door swung open with a creak. The smell hit me first. Coffee, bacon grease, something sweet, fresh, not stale. Like food had been cooked minutes ago, but the room was empty, completely empty. Plates of pancakes sat on tables, syrup dripping. A cup of coffee still steamed. A jukebox in the corner glowed faintly, but no people, no cooks, no waitresses. It looked alive, but hollow. My skin crawled. I backed out of the diner, heart racing. The silence pressed in tighter now. I thought about getting back in my car, just driving until the tank ran dry. But something held me. A pull, quiet but insistent, like the town itself didn't want me to leave. I walked further down. The motel sat dark except for the buzzing neon sign that read, "Vacancy." The windows glowed faintly. Inside, I could see a lobby desk, a guest book open, a pen laid across the page. But no clerk. The deeper I went, the stranger it felt. Every building told the same story, life but no people. Lights on, chairs pulled out, doors cracked open. But silence everywhere. It felt staged, like a set waiting for actors who never came. I stopped in the middle of the street, trying to catch my breath. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down. The street lamps hummed faintly, buzzing in uneven rhythms. And then, I heard it. Not loud, not close, just a faint sound drifting through the night. A shuffle, a scrape, Footsteps. I spun, scanning the street. Nothing. Just shadows stretching under the lamps. The sound came again. Softer now, further away. From behind the diner, maybe. Slow, dragging. I swallowed hard. Hello? My voice cracked. No answer. The sound stopped. I stood frozen, flashlight shaking in my hand. My car sat at the far end of the street, distant, small. The urge to run back to it tore at me, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I walked, slowly, carefully, toward the sound. My footsteps echoed against the empty street. I reached the side of the diner, peered down the narrow alley. Empty. Just trash cans, shadows, and the faint flicker of a street light. But when I turned back, the diner windows had changed. The plates were gone. The cups, the food, the booths sat empty now, bare, like none of it had ever been there. My chest tightened. My breath came fast. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the curb, and then the neon sign above the diner went dark. With a sharp pop, it flickered out, leaving the windows black. One by one, the other lights followed. The motel, the hardware store, the street lamps. Darkness spread down the street, swallowing building after building. Each pop echoed like a heartbeat until only one light remained, the gas station. I turned. Its glow pulsed faintly at the far end, hazy through the dark, like it was waiting for me. I stumbled back toward my car, fumbling for the handle. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the keys. I turned the ignition, heart pounding. The engine coughed, then died. I tried again. Nothing. Just a low click. The gas gauge sat on empty. I looked up. The street was pitch black now, except for the station light flickering at the end. And in the dark, I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Not one set this time. Many. From all sides. Closing in, I gripped the wheel, frozen. My headlights flickered once, dim, then died completely. I sat in silence, holding my breath, listening. The town was awake now, and I realized I wasn't supposed to find it. I thought about leaving. I thought about stepping out of the car, walking the highway on foot until the night swallowed me whole. But when the engine died, when the lights flickered out and left me in that empty street, I realized I wasn't going anywhere. The town had me. For a long moment, I sat there gripping the wheel, too afraid to move. The silence outside pressed in thick and heavy. Then, faintly, I saw it. The glow of a house light at the far end of the street. A warm yellow square in the blackness. It should have comforted me. It didn't. I forced myself out of the car, my shoes crunching against the gravel. The cold hit harder now, sharper, as if the night itself had teeth. I started walking, every step echoing down the empty street. The houses lined both sides, neat rows like something from an old postcard. Porches, shutters, little picket fences, but every door was shut tight, every window pulled dark, until the lights began to flicker. One by one, they snapped on. Faint lamps behind curtains, televisions glowing in living rooms, the soft orange shimmer of kitchens. It should have looked alive. Instead, it looked staged. Too sudden. Too perfect. I stopped in the middle of the street, my breath fogging the air. And then I saw them. Shadows. They stood in the windows, just behind the glass. Shapes of people, still and silent, framed by the glow. Some tall, some small, some hunched. Their outlines were sharp enough to see, but never clear enough to recognize. Every window I passed, another shadow. Another figure, just standing, watching. My skin crawled. I forced myself to keep moving, eyes darting from side to side. I told myself they were mannequins, tricks of light, anything but what they were. But deep down I knew. They were people, or something pretending to be. I reached the first house and climbed the porch steps. The wood groaned beneath me. I knocked on the door, my hand trembling. "Hello?" My voice sounded thin, lost against the silence. No answer. I knocked harder. "Please, I just need gas. I just need help." The door stayed shut. Behind the glass, the silhouette shifted, just slightly, a head turning. Watching me closer, I rattled the doorknob. Locked. I banged against the frame until my hand stung. Still nothing. I stepped back, chest heaving. My eyes rose to the window above the porch. Another figure stood there, still, silent, its outline blurred behind the curtain. Every hair on my body stood on end. I stumbled back down the steps, heart hammering. The street stretched ahead, lined with more houses, more lights, more shadows pressed against glass. None moved. None spoke. They only watched. I walked faster. The shadows seemed to grow thicker, filling every window I passed. Some looked small, like children. Some bent low, like the elderly. Some shapes were wrong, too long, too twisted. At the next house, I tried again. Pounded on the door until my fist ached. Please! I'm stranded. Just open the door! The shadow in the window didn't move. It only tilted its head. Slow. Crooked. I backed away, throat dry. My footsteps quickened, crunching too loud in the silence. The houses pressed close now, their windows glowing, their silhouettes clinging to the glass. I felt them staring. Following me, I tried the next door, locked. The next, locked. Every knob cold, stiff, unmoving, I shouted, voice breaking. Why won't you open the door? The shadows didn't answer. But the lights flickered all at once across the entire street. On, off, like the town itself was breathing. My heart stuttered. I stumbled into the middle of the road, spinning in circles. Every house, every store, every window held eyes on me. I turned toward the diner. The booths were empty again, but in the reflection of the glass I saw movement. Shapes sliding past, too many to count. The motel glowed faintly, windows lined with figures pressed close, their faces hidden, their bodies still. I staggered toward the hardware store, pounding on the glass door. The shelves inside were lined with tools, ropes, hammers. All neat, untouched? The silhouette of a man stood near the counter, tall and broad. His head turned slowly toward me, though I couldn't see his face. I screamed at him. "Help me! Please, just open the door!" He didn't move. The lights inside flickered, and for a second, the figure was gone. The store was empty. When they flickered again, he was back. Closer to the glass, I stumbled away, breath shaking. My skin burned with the sense of being surrounded, watched from all angles. I thought of the gas station, the last light at the end of the road. Maybe someone was still there. Maybe I wasn't alone. I forced myself to keep walking, though my legs felt like lead. Every shadow followed, not moving, but there, filling the windows, the curtains, the glow of lamps. I tried not to look, but I couldn't help it. Every time I glanced, I caught the smallest movements, a head tilting, a hand lifting, fingers tapping against the glass in a slow, steady rhythm. By the time I reached the end of the street, my chest was tight, my throat raw. The service station glowed faintly, its lights steady. The pump stood empty, dead. The office door was shut, but I wasn't alone. Through the glass, I saw a figure, sitting at the counter. Still as stone, my heart leapt. I ran to the door, slammed my hands against it. "Please, I need help!" My car's out of gas. "I don't know what's happening. Just open the door." The figure didn't move. The open sign buzzed faintly. The hum of the lights filled my ears. I pressed my face to the glass, desperate. The figure was a man, or at least shaped like one, a cap pulled low, hands folded neatly on the counter. But his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, chin pressed too close to his chest. I tapped the glass harder. "Please." The man's head jerked, snapped upright, too fast, too sharp. His face stayed hidden in the shadow of the cap, but I felt his eyes lock onto me. My stomach dropped. I stepped back, stumbling off the curb. The entire street was alive now, every window filled with silhouettes, pressing close to the glass. Watching, waiting. The lights flickered again, faster this time. On, off, on, off. My breath matched their rhythm. The town pulsed around me, alive and breathing. And then every door rattled, all at once. Handles twisting, locks straining, wood shaking in frames. The sound thundered down the street, 100 doors trying to open, but not quite. I staggered back, ears ringing. The shadows pressed harder to the windows, hands splayed, faces blurred, eyes wide. But none of the doors opened. Not one. The rattling stopped. Silence crashed down. I stood frozen in the middle of the road, chest heaving, staring at the locked doors and watching silhouettes. My skin crawled with the knowledge that they weren't letting me in. They weren't letting me out, and I realized something terrible. They weren't keeping me from them. They were keeping themselves from me. I don't know how many days I've been here. Maybe 3. Maybe a week. Time doesn't move the same way in this place. The sun never rose. The night never lifted. The air stayed the same. Cold, damp, thick with silence. But I know one thing for certain. They found my car. I wasn't there when the police pulled up. I didn't see the flashing lights, the officers stepping out, scratching their heads at the engine that still hummed, the headlights that cut through the dark, the driver's door hanging wide open, but I felt it, like the town whispered it to me, like the walls and the glass and the silent figures in the windows wanted me to know. They wanted me to understand. I was gone. Forever. The thought hit me in waves. One moment I'd try to convince myself this was a nightmare, a long, cruel dream. Any second now I'd wake up on the highway, tired but alive, my hands gripping the wheel. But then I'd see them. The silhouettes, standing in the windows, lit by lamps that never went out, watching me with their faceless stillness. And I'd remember. I wasn't dreaming. The first night I tried to leave. I walked the length of the street, past the houses and the diner and the gas station, past the bell tower that loomed at the far end of town like a broken tooth in the sky. I thought maybe if I just kept walking I'd reach the highway again, but the road only curved back into itself. I walked for hours. The cracked asphalt led me past the same gas station 3 times, the same boarded motel, the same house with the crooked porch swing. By the 3rd time I couldn't breathe. The town was a loop, a trap. That was when I stopped trying to leave. I started hiding instead. The shadows never came outside. They stayed pressed against the glass, still as mannequins. But when I stepped too close, when I dared linger in front of a window, sometimes they'd move, a hand sliding down the glass, a head turning sharply toward me, fingers tapping, slow, deliberate, like they were counting. I couldn't bear it. So I found places they couldn't see me. Behind dumpsters, inside the hollow of the bell tower stairs, sometimes under the diner's awning, crouched low where their windows couldn't reach. That's where the voices started. They weren't loud, just whispers, soft enough that I couldn't make out words, like a radio playing 2 rooms away. But they were everywhere. Sometimes it sounded like my own name. Sometimes it sounded like laughter. Other times, it was just the faint murmur of a crowd. Hundreds of voices humming at once, filling my skull, pressing against the inside of my ears until I wanted to scream. But screaming didn't help. Nothing helped. The second night, I made a mistake. I tried the police. Not real police, just the idea of them. I saw a building that looked like a small-town station. The sign faded, the windows glowing faintly. For a moment, I felt relief. I told myself this was it. Someone was inside. Someone in uniform. Someone who could drive me out of here. I pushed on the door. To my surprise, it opened. Inside, the lights buzzed weakly. Desks lined the walls. Papers scattered across the floor. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat cold on one of the tables, steam long gone. And there, behind the counter, was a man. Or, I thought it was a man. He sat with his back straight, a hat low on his head. His hands rested flat on the desk. For a long time, he didn't move. I whispered hello. Then louder. I stepped closer, desperate. His head lifted, and that's when I saw it wasn't a face. Not really. Just the blur of features, soft and melted like candle wax left too close to the fire. But even without eyes, I felt him staring at me. I bolted. I ran into the street, my lungs burning, the whispers screaming in my ears now, louder than ever. That night I didn't sleep. I haven't slept since. The town doesn't let me. When my eyes close, I see them more clearly, the figures in the windows. Not shadows anymore, not silhouettes, but people. Pale skin, hollow eyes, mouths that don't move but still whisper. Hundreds of them, thousands. Filling the houses, pressed shoulder to shoulder, packed behind the glass like insects in a jar. Watching, always watching. By the 3rd day, or what I think was the 3rd, the hunger set in. My stomach cramped, My lips cracked. I searched the diner, the store, even the gas station office. Every shelf was stocked. Food, drinks, cans, all untouched. But every time I picked something up, the whispers grew louder. My vision blurred. My throat tightened like I was about to choke. I dropped everything. I couldn't eat. The town didn't want me to. And that's when the thought crept in. A terrible, gnawing thought that wouldn't let me go. Maybe I wasn't supposed to leave. Maybe I wasn't supposed to eat. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be anymore. Maybe I was supposed to join them. I don't know how long I've been fighting that thought. Hours, days. My head feels heavy, like my mind isn't my own anymore. I walk the streets now, and sometimes I think I see myself in the windows. A figure shaped like me, standing where I'm not, watching me with my own shadow. And sometimes I feel it, something pulling at me, tugging from the inside, like my reflection wants me to step through the glass and take my place on the other side. Maybe that's how it happens. Maybe that's how they all got here. Travelers, strangers, people who wandered too far and never left. Now the police have my car, my ID, my jacket, my whole life sitting abandoned on the edge of the highway. They'll wonder what happened. They'll make theories. Did I walk into the woods? Did someone take me? Did I end it all myself? They'll never know. They'll never find me here, because there's nothing to find. I can feel it now, stronger than ever. My body is still walking these streets, still shivering in the cold. But my mind, my soul, whatever you want to call it, it's slipping. The whispers are clearer. The faces in the glass are sharper, and they're calling to me. I think soon I'll answer. And when I do, when I finally press my hand to the window and step inside, I'll never leave again. I'll be one of them, a shadow, a silhouette, another watcher in the silent town, missing forever. I still remember the night the phone rang. It wasn't late, not really, just past 9. I was sitting in the living room, the TV low, the sound more like background noise than something I was watching. It had been a long day, the kind that leaves you heavy, where even silence feels like too much effort. When the phone buzzed across the table, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was another scam call or maybe one of those random wrong numbers I kept getting. But when I picked it up and saw my sister's name, I felt something strange in my stomach. Not excitement, not relief. Something else. Something off. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. That wasn't unusual. She had this way of disappearing when life got hard. She'd shut everyone out, vanish until she decided she was ready to face the world again. I'd gotten used to it. Still, her name lighting up my phone felt heavier than it should have. I answered quickly, almost too quickly. Hello? At first there was nothing, just static. A thin hiss, like wind slipping through a crack in the wall. I thought maybe the connection was bad. I pulled the phone away from my ear, looked at the signal bars. Full strength. Perfect connection. Hello? I said again, a little sharper. That's when I heard her. My sister's voice, thin and trembling, somewhere underneath all that noise. Sis. It was her, no doubt. But her words broke apart, carried away by the static before they could reach me fully. Are you okay? I asked, leaning forward like it would help me hear her better. Where are you? There was a pause. A long, stretched-out silence that wasn't really silent at all. The static filled it, like something alive, moving. And then, through it, I caught her again. Help me. The words were fragile, like paper dissolving in water. My chest tightened. Where are you? I said louder. Tell me where you are. I'll come get you. But instead of an answer, the static swelled. It rose in my ear like a rushing tide, so loud I had to hold the phone away. And then beneath it, I thought I heard something else, something faint. A whisper. Not hers. It was softer than her voice, but clearer somehow. A low murmur, like someone speaking right against the receiver. I froze. my hand shaking. "Who's there?" I whispered before I could stop myself. No reply. Just the noise. I pressed the phone back to my ear, desperate. "Please, just talk to me," I begged. "Say something." Her voice came back, broken, struggling against the interference. "Can't get out. They won't let me." My whole body went cold. "They? Who's they?" I asked, my throat tight. The static cut her off, swallowing whatever she said next. I felt my skin crawl, a prickling sensation up my arms. And then, just as I was about to hang up and call her back, I heard that whisper again. It wasn't in English, at least not completely. The sounds slipped and twisted, as though the voice wasn't meant for me to understand. A rhythm, a chant maybe, carried on the static itself. I pulled the phone away and stared at it. My sister's name still glowed on the screen as if everything was normal, but nothing about it was normal. I pressed it back to my ear. "Listen to me," I said, my voice shaking. "Tell me where you are. Please. I'm sorry." She breathed, barely audible. "I shouldn't have called." And then the line went dead. Just silence. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen, my hand still clutching the phone like it might ring again. But it didn't. I tried calling her back, once, twice, 10 times. Each time it went straight to voicemail. The sound of her recorded voice hit me like a punch to the stomach. Bright, casual, so normal compared to what I just heard. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in the living room with the phone on the table, waiting. Every little noise in the house made me flinch. The hum of the fridge, the pipes groaning in the walls, even the wind outside scraping against the windows sounded like whispers if I listened too long. The next morning, I called her apartment. No answer. I called her work. They hadn't seen her in days. That wasn't unusual either, but now it felt different. It felt dangerous. I went to her place. The building smelled of dust and stale smoke, the kind of place where every sound echoed too long. Her door was locked, and no one answered when I knocked. I pressed my ear to it, half expecting to hear the static again, like it had followed her here. But there was nothing. I stood there for too long, my forehead resting against the cold wood. Every instinct told me something was wrong, something more than just her vanishing again. The last words she'd said replayed in my mind, over and over. "They won't let me." Who was they? And that whisper. What was that? It didn't sound human. Not really. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad connection, that I'd imagined the rest. But deep down, I knew better. The static wasn't just noise. It felt alive, like it was holding her, keeping her from reaching me. That night, I left my phone by my bed, volume turned all the way up. I prayed it would ring again. I prayed she'd call back and tell me where she was, but the call never came. What did come were the dreams. Dreams of static, filling every corner of my head until I couldn't breathe. Dreams of a voice whispering through it, words I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. And sometimes, in those dreams, I saw her, my sister, standing just beyond the noise, reaching for me, mouth open, but no sound. When I woke, the silence of the house felt worse than the dreams. Empty. Waiting. I started leaving the TV on at night, the low drone of voices keeping me from hearing the hiss that seemed to linger in the walls. But sometimes, even over the sound, I thought I heard it. That faint crackle, like a bad signal just behind everything. I couldn't tell anymore if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But I knew this much. Her last phone call wasn't an accident. It wasn't just static. Something was with her that night. And whatever it was, I don't think it was finished with me either. When I finally told the police about the call, I expected them to brush me off. People disappear all the time, and I knew how it sounded. My missing sister calling me from nowhere, her voice swallowed in static, whispers bleeding through the line. It sounded like a bad dream, but to my surprise, they listened. Oh, maybe it was the fear in my voice, or maybe they could hear how desperate I was. One of the investigators, a man named Keller, took the phone from me and played back the call. I didn't even know my phone had kept a recording of it until he pressed the screen and the sound filled the room. That hiss, it was worse than I remembered. Hearing it played back made me realize how wrong it really was. Static shouldn't move like that. It shouldn't have layers, depth, like 100 different voices pressed together, gasping and twisting into one. I watched Keller's face as he listened, and I could tell he heard it too. When my sister's voice cut through the noise, broken and weak, I had to look away. I'd memorized those words already. Help me. And then the part that still sat in my chest like a stone. They won't let me. When the recording ended, the room was silent. Keller glanced at the other officer, then back at me. "Do you mind if we trace this call?" he asked. I nodded. I would have done anything to find her. They worked quickly. Within a day, Keller called me back with news. They had traced the signal to a stretch of land in the mountains, about 2 hours outside the city. He explained that it wasn't easy to track. The signal bounced strangely, splitting in ways that made no sense. But eventually it led back to that place. He called it a dead zone. No towers, no homes, nothing but rock and trees. A place where calls shouldn't even be possible. I told him I wanted to go with them. At first he refused, but I begged until he relented. Maybe he thought I deserved to be there. Or maybe he didn't want to be alone out there either. We drove up the mountain roads the next morning. The further we went, the quieter the world became. My phone lost service miles before we reached the location, and even the radio gave out, sinking into a low hiss before cutting off entirely. The silence after was heavy, pressing. The road narrowed until it turned into little more than a dirt path. Trees leaned in close from both sides, their branches clawing at the sky. The car jolted and rattled over rocks, each bump reminding me how far we were from anyone who could help. Finally, Keller stopped the car. "This is it," he said, pointing to a stretch of trees. No signs, no trails, nothing to mark the place. Just wilderness. We stepped out. The air was cold, colder than it should have been for the season. I wrapped my jacket tighter and followed the crunch of boots on dead leaves as Keller led the way. There was no sound. Not birds, not wind, not even the distant hum of traffic. Just the crunch of our steps. "Signal should have come from right around here," Keller muttered, checking the device in his hand. We searched for hours, up steep ridges, through thickets of brush that tore at our clothes, across rocks slick with moss. My chest ached, but I kept moving. I couldn't stop. Not when she might be out here. And then, near a clearing, Keller stopped. "There," he said. I followed his gaze. At first, I didn't see it. Just leaves, branches, a scatter of stones. But then I caught the glint of metal under the dirt. It was a phone. My heart dropped. I rushed forward, kneeling in the cold earth. The phone was shattered, the screen spiderwebbed with cracks. Mud clung to it, filling the gaps. I brushed it off with trembling hands, praying for some sign it wasn't hers. But I knew it was. The little sticker she'd put on the back, faded now, but still visible, proved it. It was her phone. My throat tightened. "She was here," I whispered. Keller crouched beside me, his face grim. He picked up the phone carefully, turning it over in his hands. "It's dead," he said. Probably for a while, but something about the way he said it made me shiver. He didn't just mean the battery. I looked around the clearing. The ground was uneven. Patches of dirt and rock torn up like something had dragged through. Branches were snapped, broken in directions that didn't make sense. "She didn't just drop this," I said quietly. "Something happened here." Keller didn't answer. He slipped the phone into a bag and stood. "We'll get it to forensics," he said, but his voice was distant. As we headed back to the car, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The trees felt closer, leaning in, like they wanted to swallow us whole. Every time I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye, it vanished when I turned my head. By the time we reached the car, my chest was tight with dread. On the drive back, Keller was quiet. I finally asked him what he thought happened. He gripped the wheel tighter. "There's no reason her phone should have worked out here. he said. No towers, no service. Calls don't just happen in dead zones. I nodded, but inside I was sinking. If there was no way a call should have gone through, then what had I heard that night? Back home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The shattered phone lying in the dirt. The strange marks in the clearing. The way the static had sounded less like noise and more like breathing. That night, I dreamed again. I was standing in that same clearing, the trees towering over me. In the dirt, her phone lay face up, glowing faintly through the cracks. I bent down to pick it up, but before I could touch it, I heard the static. Not from the phone. From the trees themselves, the sound poured from them, rushing like wind, whispering in voices that weren't voices. I looked up, and in the spaces between the branches, I saw shapes. Thin, shifting, almost human. Watching. I woke with my heart pounding. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. But I swore I could still hear it. The faint hiss, like a call trying to push through. The investigators didn't find anything else in the mountains. Just the phone. No tracks, no clothing, no sign of her. It was like she'd been erased, swallowed by that place. But I know she was there. The phone proved it. And I know she called me, even if the world says that call was impossible. Somewhere in that dead zone, something let her voice through. Something wanted me to hear, and I can't stop wondering if it's still trying. It's been years since my sister disappeared. I've tried to build a life around that hole. Tried to tell myself that grief is just another room you learn to live in. Some days it feels almost normal, like the weight has dulled. Other days it presses in so hard I can barely breathe. But even now, after all this time, I still keep the same phone, the same number. People tell me to upgrade, to move on, but I can't. I can't let go of the chance that maybe, just maybe, she'll call again. For a long time, nothing happened. No dreams, no whispers, no static. Just silence until last month. The first call came a little after midnight. I was half asleep when the phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it without thinking, expecting spam or some wrong number. But when I saw the screen, my chest froze. It was her number, the same one I'd called over and over the night she vanished. The one that had been disconnected years ago. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stared at the glowing screen, my heart hammering so loud I thought I'd go deaf. Then, with shaking hands, I answered, "Hello?" At first, nothing. Just the faint hiss of static, soft and steady. My throat closed up. "Is it you?" I whispered. The static swelled like breath being drawn in. And then through it, so faint I almost thought I imagined it, I heard her. "Sis!" Her voice. It was exactly the same as that night. Thin, trembling, drowned in noise. I sat up in bed, clutching the phone so hard my fingers hurt. "Where are you?" I begged. "Please, tell me where you are." "Cold," she said, her words breaking apart. "Oh, cold." The static cracked, sharp in my ear, and beneath it I heard something else. A murmur, low and steady. That same whispering language I'd heard before. The one that made no sense but sank deep into me like I wasn't just hearing it, I was carrying it. I pressed the phone tighter. "Don't hang up. Don't leave me again." "I didn't," she breathed. "They still..." Her words cut off. The static roared, filling the line until it drowned everything. I screamed her name over and over, but then the call ended. Just silence. I sat there for hours, staring at the phone in my hand. The screen was dark, but I swear I could still feel the vibration of her voice against my skin. The next morning, I called the carrier. I demanded answers. They told me, politely but firmly, that her number had been inactive for years, disconnected, impossible to use. But I know what I heard, and it didn't stop there. The second call came 3 nights later. Same time, same number glowing in the dark. This time I didn't hesitate. I answered on the first ring. "Hello?" Static, then her voice again. "Help?" It was softer this time, like she was further away. I choked on my words. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to find you." "They won't let me," she whispered. The line cracked, snapping in my ear. For a moment I thought I heard crying, but it was impossible to tell if it was hers or mine. I tried recording the call, like Keller had done all those years ago. But every time, the file came out empty. Just silence. As if the phone itself refused to hold on to her voice. The calls kept coming. Not every night, Sometimes a week would pass, sometimes more, but always after midnight. Always the same number. Always her voice, tangled in static and whispers. I started to dread the quiet hours, lying awake in the dark with the phone beside me, waiting, hoping, fearing. People don't believe me when I tell them. Friends smile sadly and change the subject. The police won't even take my calls anymore. To them, it's grief, hallucinations, a woman who never let go of her sister. But I know it's real. The last call was different. It came 2 nights ago. When I answered, the static was heavier, thicker, like a storm in my ear. I almost dropped the phone, and then I heard her. "Don't answer anymore," she whispered. Her voice was clearer than it had ever been. My stomach turned. "What do you mean?" "They're listening." The line cracked, voices spilling through. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once. That strange language twisting and grinding against itself. I pressed my hands to my ears, but I couldn't block it out. The sound was inside me, a chorus of whispers that seemed to stretch beyond the phone, filling the room, filling me. I screamed into the receiver. "What do they want?" For a moment, everything went silent. And then, in the clearest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, "You." The line went dead. I dropped the phone and backed into the corner of my room, shaking. The house was silent again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. Like something had followed the call through the line and was now standing in the shadows with me. I haven't slept since. I keep every light on, but it doesn't help. The silence hums, low and steady, like static waiting to rise. My phone sits on the table, face down. I'm too afraid to look at it. But I know it'll ring again. It always does. And when it does, I don't know if I'll have the strength to answer, or the strength not to. Because sometimes in the middle of the night, when the world is quiet and I'm too tired to keep my eyes open, I think I hear it already. Hear it. The faint buzz, the soft hiss, still ringing.